A warmer from the low. Welcome to lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Hoops Peterson, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. We've got an excellent podcast for you. We're going to be joined in segment number 2 by one of our good friends, Colby Marchio. He does great work over at Your Betting News. We're going to be chatting with him about what he's made out of the top teams in the sport, the way that he just doesn't want any part of futures right now, which that's music to my ears because I am someone that is very much a game-to-game bettor. He's been just taking a look at conference play thus far. We're going to take a look at the Big East landscape with him as well. And then in the final segment, going to get you guys picks and analysis on every game on the betting board for this college basketball Thursday as we hit some bank shots. If you have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, you do have one of two ways we'll fire those in. First one is my Twitter / X timeline at @GUNet_81. Keep in mind, letters name does not matter, so as per usual, please do send these into the timeline. And the other way is find an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it's very much appreciated. From there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review. While I did not get in any Twitter / X questions today, we had ourselves a fun day of college basketball on Wednesday. Let's take a look back at it, try to find some trends, and try to get to know these teams a little bit better.
Games from yesterday is Greg buzzing about. Here is the rowdy recap.
Number 1 remains dominant for Cincinnati. Well, they were on to a big giant loss, 77-51, the final. Arizona absolutely able to dismantle a Cincinnati team that went 4 of 21 from 3, 17 out of 56 overall from the floor. They lose the turnover battle, 14-6 for Arizona. Rock solid performance all the way across the board. Nobody with more than 17 points as Montevideo Cuevas, 17 points, 9 rebounds, but Braden Burris, double-double, 12 points, 10 rebounds, 4 assists. For Arizona, just a workman-like performance. They only go 3 of 13 from three-point range, but they didn't need to attempt a lot of threes in this one, so that was another quality cover for them. And typically when it comes to top-ranked teams in all of college basketball, sometimes the numbers just get a little bit exorbitant for them, but Arizona has been a relatively good cover team all season long, unlike Arizona State. We'll get to them a little bit later on, but that said, for Arizona, now against the spread this far this season, they do find themselves at 10-7-1 against the spread. By the way, Arizona State is actually 10-8-1 against the spread. With the loss that they did take on Wednesday, they do fall to West Virginia. West Virginia was down early on in this game, but they clawed their way back in the second half, outscoring Arizona State by a count of 40-26 in that second half, 75-63. The final as West Virginia does go 11-24 from three-point range, 23 big points out of Trayson Eaglestaff, who was a little bit underwhelming to begin the season, but it seems as though he is picking it up in terms of other top 25 teams. Nebraska, not quite a cover, as a little bit north of a 10-point favorite, but they still had a nice solid win over Washington, 76-66 the final. Nebraska did get up 13 points at the half. Washington was able to claw their way back a little bit, and for Nebraska, they continue to dare you to shoot from 3, and teams are not shooting well from the outside. 6 of 21 from 3 for Washington. Meanwhile, Nebraska 11 of 29 from 3. Bryce Sanford was your main guy in this one for Mr. Sanford. He supplies the team with 23 points, goes 4 of 7 from 3-point range, and for Nebraska, they actually lose a rebound battle by kind of 33-31, but they were able to do a pretty solid job taking care of the ball. Only about 8 turnovers in this game, and Washington ran out with a whole bunch of injuries. Wesley Yates now back out of the fold for the team, so that's not the break that they are looking for. And for Gonzaga, they were without Graham Ike against Pepperdine, so they do not get a cover on the right around about 27-28 point spread, but they get a very convincing win, 84-60, the final, as for Gonzaga, just 5 of 20 from 3-point range, but you had a nice performance off the bench from Davis Fogel, who he had 17 points. He made his only 3. I don't know why they're not giving him more minutes right now, but he also had 10 rebounds out of Ismaila Dange. Hopefully I got that correct. He was the main guy in terms of being able to help this team win the battle on the glass by a count of 42-34, and for Pepperdine, 3 of 22 from 3-point range. By the way, for Gonzaga, they had 4 players off the bench score double figures. Lone starter that scored in double figures, Adam Miller, with 11 points. So little bit of a funky bunch sort of lineup there for Illinois. In a lot of places, you were catching them as about like an 18.5 point favorite. If you were able to get in on that, you were just barely able to get the cover over Maryland. For Illinois, they do get the job done, this by a count of 89-70, and for Illinois, they got up very big very early. Maryland made it a little bit more respectable in the second half, but for Illinois, they were hitting on all cylinders from 3-point range. 15 out of 40 from 3-point range. Jake Davis, he was able to go 4 of 6 from the outside. Andrei Stojakovic, who's had a little bit of an up and down sort of season, he supplied the team with 30 points. And for Maryland, 10 of 32 from 3-point range, and they get blown out on the glass. They lose that battle 47-31. To their credit, they won the turnover battle 7-5, and you did have 15 points in this game from David Hewitt, so that was solid. And for Maryland, now 1-7 in Big Ten play, so that has been a little bit rough for them. If you're looking at your top and bottom against the spread teams in all of college basketball, right now your top team is actually Mercer. The Bears of Mercer are now 15-2 against the spread thus far this season. We did see them in action on Wednesday, and they were able to find a way to be able to cover against Western Carolina. This by a count of 88-76, as Western Carolina has not been a team that's done a great job in terms of taking care of the ball and flow good, clean offense. They have 16 turnovers in this game at Mercer. They only went 6-26 from 3-point range, but won the rebound battle by a count of 44-40, so they continue to be able to make you a whole bunch of money this season. You also saw Sam Houston State, who's now 13-3 against the spread, get it done against the Kennesaw State team. We give our Odelaine Kiffin Go Owls, who's now without their top scorer in Simeon Cottle, 93-87 the final. This was an all-over-the-place sort of game, and for both teams, they shot it well from 3. Kennesaw State 13-34 from 3-point range. Sam Houston 11-22 from 3 with Po'boy King, great name, 23 points. And for Sam Houston, only 12-19 at the free throw line, but they did a nice job in terms of finding a way to be able to get the ball inside. And for Kennesaw State, even though they won the rebound battle 41-36, unable to pull this one out without their top scorer. And Liberty has been a very interesting team. They are a team that has been really shooting it well from 3, 76-69. They're able to take down Western Kentucky as they went 17 out of 29 from 3-point range in this game. It's been a Liberty team that has had some various results against the spread thus far this season. They're now 8-8 against the spread, but that was quite the expose. So that was one of your more fun games of the night. And then another team that has been pretty rock solid against the spread thus far this season has been Tulsa, 11-5-1 against the spread, and it looked like they were going to be going down to Memphis. Memphis was able to build a lead with, I would say, about 7 or so minutes remaining, and then Memphis in the final 7 or so minutes got outscored 23-4. As for Memphis, they lose 83-66. For Tulsa, they go 8-24 from 3. A little bit of an off night for them, but they did a nice job winning the rebound battle 40-36. They win the turnover battle 15-8. As for Tulsa, you had Miles Barnstable be able to supply 17 points, and they go 31 out of 36 at the charity stripe as well. So a great performance out there. And for UTSA, meet the Roadrunners have been one of your worst against the spread teams in all of college basketball this year. 3-14 against the spread. Only Texas Southern has been worse, and another non-cover for them. They fall to North Texas 81-62, and for UTSA, they lose the turnover battle in this game 15-13. They lose the rebound battle 46-25, and North Texas, despite going just 16 out of 26 at the free throw line, they do find a way to be able to cover that number. So UTSA, things are just not looking great for them, to say the least, as he had another non-cover. And East Carolina, by the way, sticking out there in the American, they have been a great non-cover team for you as well. 77-60, East Carolina fails to cover yet another spread, so they're 5-12 against the spread. As for Wichita State, they go just 9 of 34 from 3-point range, but they had on their side Kenon Giles, who was able to supply 27 points for Wichita State, win the rebound battle 49-35. They actually lose the turnover battle 8-6, but this East Carolina team, they can't hit water if they fell out of a boat from 3-point range. They shoot in this game 4 of 19 from 3, a bottom 20 team in all of college basketball with regards to their 3-point shooting percentage, and that continued on this night. And Florida Atlantic go Owls. They have been one of your better against the spread teams, 79-74. They get the win. They do not get the cover against Tulane, though, as Tulane has been a team that has struggled all season long in terms of hitting the glass. Not the world's worst performance here. They lose that rebound battle by a count of 31-30 for Florida Atlantic. They go 8 of 18 from 3-point range, but relatively spirited effort out of the Tulsa Golden Hurricanes. So now for Florida Atlantic, they are 13-5 against the spread thus far this season. And if you're looking at your top over and under teams in all of college basketball, top over team is going to be in action on Thursday in Denver. They're currently 15 overs, 1 under, and 1 push. That's been absolutely insane, to say the least. But in terms of teams that were actually in action on Wednesday, the New Mexico Lobos have been a really good over team thus far this season. They're not necessarily the greatest three-point shooting team or a rambunctious team, but 13 overs to 5 unders thus far this season. They get a win against Fresno State, 83-74. They're unable to cover the double-figure spread, and neither team shot it amazing from three. Fresno State 10-29 from three, 10-35 on New Mexico, but for New Mexico, they were able to do a nice job generating second and third chances. Fresno State, they went 22-26 at the free throw line, so New Mexico, they were able to cash yet another over out there. Gardner-Webb has been a great over team, not necessarily because of their scoring, but because boy oh boy are these guys absolutely giving it up, and they get lambasted once again. As for this Gardner-Webb team, they lose 91-56 to Longwood, a Longwood team that has not been good on offense thus far this season. And for Longwood, 7-24 from three, but they were able to knife the ball down low. They went 29 out of 41 on their 2-point shots. They won the rebound battle 41-29. Gardner-Webb has also been a really, really bad against the spread team that lost to North Greenville, a non-Division I team earlier this season. So yay, verily, they cash you another over. And for UNC Greensboro, they're now 12 overs to 6 unders. They were able to get the job done in an early game against VMI, as they're able to dismantle VMI in this one by a count of 85-78. They were able to get the cover in that game, as well as for Greensboro, 8 of 19 from 3 points, 13 out of 37 for the Cadets. But for VMI, they lose a rebound battle 41-36, and they go 13 out of 22 at the free throw line. So yay, verily, to Greensboro being able to get the job done out there. You also saw North Carolina in action against Notre Dame. Nice win and cover for them. 91-69 was the final. As for Notre Dame, they go in this game 8 of 25 from three, but on their 2-point shots, they only go 19 out of 50, and they go 7 of 13 at the free throw line. Meanwhile, Caleb Wilson had himself a day, 7 rebounds, 5 assists, 22 points, and for North Carolina, they go 13 out of 34 from 3 points. Really a by-committee effort in the backcourt in this one, and they do lose a turnover battle by a count of 8-5, but they win that rebound battle 44-39. So North Carolina, they do find a way to be able to get a win and cover. Do have to have this up by midnight Pacific, 3 o'clock a.m. Eastern, so we do have a few late results that are pending right now. Northwestern up 31-28 at the half on USC, so we shall see how that one materializes. But a bad performance here for Dayton on Wednesday, as we saw some very funky Atlantic 10 action. As for Richmond, them blowing that game 69-68 to Rhode Island, that was a little bit less than tremendous. And LaSalle is a pretty sizable underdog of right around about 10 or so points. They take it to Dayton 67-64. The finals, Dayton went 3 of 23 from 3-point range, and for LaSalle, they've been exploring covers all season long. They lose the turnover battle 15-13, but they did a nice job in this one, holding them from the inside. And for LaSalle, they win this game despite going 18 out of 28 at the free throw line. So Dayton, that was not a great loss for them, to say the least. Fordham, they've been a really good under team for you as well, 68-63. They lose, but they get a cover against Davidson. They were able to cash you yet another under out there. And if you're looking at your top under teams in all of college basketball, Fordham, they're up to 13 unders to 4 overs. Cincinnati, 15 unders, 4 overs. We saw them get that under against Arizona. Your best under team is Hawaii. They're going to be in action on Thursday, but UT Arlington has been another one of them, 13 unders to 4 overs thus far this season, and they played against Charleston St, and this was a ugly game, so you were able to get a nice quality under there. And for UT Arlington, they do find a way to persevere, get the job done by a count of 71-64. As for Charleston St, they go 2 of 9 from 3, so they're very much looking to pile drive the ball inside. Both of these teams play even up on the glass, 29-29, and to the credit of Charleston St, 18-19 at the free throw line, but they lost the turnover battle 18-14. You had Dior Johnson off the bench, give you 16 points, a little bit uncharacteristic of him. And for UT Arlington, you had 23 points out of Rayshon Semester, who was able to give you 8 rebounds as well. Pretty shocking upset, as Utah Valley is a double-figure favorite. They actually lose outright to Southern Utah, 84-70. And Southern Utah, 3-4 in WAC play after they were absolutely awful in non-conference play, so feels like they're starting to figure a little bit of something out. Each of their scores were able to put up double figures, so yay, verily to them. Another team has been very good to the under thus far this season has been Pepperdine. We mentioned them a little bit earlier. 5 overs to 14 unders thus far this season, and Dayton now 6 overs to 13 unders. Same for Northern Iowa, and Northern Iowa, they played a game against Illinois State that took college basketball back to the dark ages, as Illinois State, well, this was normal for them, being being able to pick up a win out there in Normal, Illinois. 59-54 the final. These two teams shot it horribly from three. Illinois State 7-25 from three, 3 of 18 for Northern Iowa, but Northern Iowa, even though they lose a rebound battle by a count of 42-29, they hold in there by winning the turnover battle 17-9. All sorts of sloppy in this game. Bowden Skunberg, 20 points for Illinois State, and for Northern Iowa, Ben Schwieger was able to chip in their 15 points, and you've seen Murray State be a relatively solid cover team this year, but they do fall to Drake 101-90 as a favorite, so you're seeing some madness out there in the Missouri Valley as Murray State actually started out 8-0 in conference play, so and one was a little bit of a shocker, and then another team that's been solid to the under, Southern Illinois. 6 overs to 13 unders. Really, the entire Missouri Valley Conference has been pretty solid to the under thus far this season, and they played a nice hearty under as well as for Valparaiso. They were able to do a nice job of holding them down, and for Valparaiso, they do find a way to pull this one out by a kind of 69-63 in a game where Southern Illinois was 3 of 14 from three-point range. Valparaiso actually 7 of 16 from three, and both teams shot it horribly at the free throw line. Southern Illinois 18 of 30, 20 out of 30 for the Valparaiso Beacons. And if you're taking a look at trend-wise, what we're getting in college basketball right now, it has been a very equal split between overs and unders thus far this season. 1,615 overs, 1,614 unders. That's 50-50 as it gets, but the underdogs are starting to reign supreme, hitting at 51.3% against the spread, 16.57 and 15.71 against the spread. Meanwhile, if you look at the last 7 days in college basketball, underdogs are hitting at about 54.7%, 182 and 151. So that's where we're seeing college basketball right now, and that's where we're seeing trend-wise. Coming up next, how about if we do chat it up with our good friend Colby Marchio of Your Betting News right here on Cusco Soups with myself, Greg Peterson, now a part of the VSiN Family Podcast. Side edge this college basketball season? Well, VSiN experts use CBB Analytics, the most comprehensive college basketball analytics platform in the world. See injury impact, on and off data, clutch time performance metrics, first versus second half splits, and so much more. Utilize the promo code of VSiN, that is VSIN, to get $30 off and find your betting edge over at cbbanalytics.com. That is cbbanalytics, all one word.com. For anyone that is new to VSiN, well, I wish you a friendly hello. This is an attention to anyone that is new to VSiN because you're able to get some free stuff with our daily newsletter. It's a great way to catch up on everything that's happening in the sports betting world. It's delivered straight to your inbox every single morning. VSiN's newsletter offers picks, data, strategies for the day's betting menu, and so much more. Sign up for free today over at VSiN.com/newsletter. That's VSIN.com/newsletter, and start receiving your free newsletter tomorrow morning. That is VSIN.com/newsletter. Stay ahead of the game and bet smarter with VSiN. And we're back here in lovely Las Vegas for Cusco Soups with myself, Greg Peterson, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. It's always great to be joined by this man, as we've got Colby Marchio aboard. He does great work over at Your Betting News, taking a look at a little bit of everything, whether that be football, basketball, baseball, you name it, he does it. He's joined by one of our good friends, Shaggy Betts, a.k.a. Nate Horning, who's been joining the podcast a lot this season, as Nate calls himself the handler of Colby. We're going to need to get the backstory on that, and we've got just a lot to dive in on in general with Colby, who you're able to follow him on the old Twitter/X at Colby M. Betts all together. And Colby, always a pleasure, my friend. Thank you.
Thank you, Greg. And there's truly no backstory. Nate one day just goes, check my bio. Nah. And I go, and I saw it. It's hilarious that he still has it. I love that he has it. And there's no backstory, which I think makes it even better.
I love it. A story without a story. That is exactly what you love. Hey, Seinfeld was the show about nothing for the longest of times, and it was one of the most successful shows in the history of TV. So we always love that. And what has been successful is taking a look at some of these teams against the spread. And your DePaul Blue Demons out there in a Big East, I think we both agree, has been very interesting thus far this season. I've been a profitable team. And just how do you take a look at them and the Big East in general? Because I think that we would both agree UConn is that creme de la creme team. They've been the top team here in the Big East and really one of the best teams in all of college basketball. But I think the Big East is so interesting, especially with myself being a Wisconsin guy and watching Marquette. Well, I'll go straight down the toilet and be one of the least profitable teams in the country.
Yeah, I cannot stand Marquette. And
there was a great meme that I saw on Twitter where there's the old movie where it's like, I'm the captain now of Tom Hanks and everything.
Yeah.
And there was someone that did that for Marquette and said, hey, look at me. I'm the new DePaul.
Yes. Yeah. All right. So I'll bounce back and forth to being a two-time alum and also being a non-biased sports fan because I try my best to be as non-biased as humanly possible. But God forbid a man has a favorite team that he happened to go to school at, and the team happens to be fun. So I'll just go through all of my roller coaster emotions with DePaul. I kind of went down in the dumps when they lost to Buffalo because at the time Buffalo was ranked like 340th on Bart Torvik. And I'm like, all right, DePaul should kill them. And then they lost Northwestern, but they kept it close. They covered against Northwestern. And then I just was like, all right, well, I'm down in the dumps after that. Then they had a really okay non-conference schedule. They typically do. It's typically always the weakest in just all of basketball, in my opinion. Like, get some tests in before you go into conference play. But they're 7-1 against the spread in conference play. They've played everybody, everybody as in the best teams in the Big East, in my opinion. They've covered against UConn. They did not cover, or they covered against St. John's and Villanova, Butler, and all them that they've already played. I'm trying to remember all the schedule. It's been 8 games. So they're awesome right now. As an alum, they're awesome. I was at the game on Friday where they had over 1,000 students, which is something that has never happened in the history of DePaul playing at Wintrust. It was beautiful. It was very humbling as an alumni seeing the growth of the program. A tear almost came out of my eyes, Greg, but I knew bigger was ahead of us. The fact that Marquette game wasn't 90% Marquette like it was when I was at DePaul, and it was always a road game. I mean, most of the Big East teams are in the Midwest, so it's really easy to get over from Indianapolis to Chicago, Milwaukee to Chicago. So those games are usually road games. I never considered a home game at Wintrust a true home game, but that actually felt like a home game. You felt the turn of the program, and I am fully even more bought into Chris Holtmann. I love this team. I love their identity of being defense first. They're top 50 in defense, and they have been honing in on that all season long. And if you don't like fun, go kick rocks and do something else because DePaul is fun. I'm not going to say they're back, but that hopefully is coming soon. And I keep saying this, Greg, and I know you'll appreciate this. If Indiana can do it, DePaul can too.
Absolutely. And man, it is incredible what we've been seeing on some of these teams. Hey, Nebraska's never won an NCAA tournament game. And as we're doing this podcast right now, they're undefeated. So you know what? We could be seeing the rise of the Midwest tomato cans right now. And I don't look now, but George Mikan is all of a sudden smiling on this DePaul team as Colby Marchio does great work over at Your Betting News is joining me right here on Coast to Coast Hoops. And certainly that's been a great story. And what else has been an interesting story is just taking a look at sort of the roller coaster ride that we have been seeing for some of these top teams. Because I mentioned Nebraska, they have been one of your best cover teams in all of college basketball. We've had some teams come out of the woodwork, but as we've been looking at the top teams in college basketball, like Iowa State, Michigan, it feels like there's been a little bit of strife with them. And how much do you think that we're seeing sort of that tier 2, tier 3 in college basketball really start to rise up, and perhaps a little bit of the opposite of last year where you had those 3 or 4 dominant teams, and this year I feel like it's a little bit more, shall we say, closely knit between that tier 1 and that tier 2.
Also, fun fact, I'm from the same hometown as George Mikan and same high school. So that's a fun fact. Yeah, it's same high school as Rudy as well. But to your question, I was thinking about it today because I'm not eager to go out and bet anyone to win the Natty. I do have a Zags ticket at 20-1. I just took them early on the season because one of the deepest teams in terms of experience, and I think that's just a huge turn on. But as of right now, I don't have any urgency to go and bet Michigan or Arizona. I think those are really truly the top 2 teams at the moment. It's weird for me to be confident with an Arizona team because as year past with Caleb Love, you can't trust that team with Caleb Love. And I know you talked about it early on in the season that it's an addition by subtraction with them no longer having him. And it truly has that. I think that is a very trustworthy team, despite what their track record has been in March. I mean, there's a lot of teams out there now that I feel like the drop-off is just so drastic. I don't trust Tennessee. I think Vanderbilt is turning into a fraud. Nate Hornung has used the term that they're the Indianapolis Colts. They started out hot. They had us in the first half. Now they're cooling off, and I do think that. Iowa State, their few losses have been very concerning, even though they do have one of the most dominating wins going into West Lafayette and beating Purdue handily on the road. But yeah, I know UConn is the best team in the Big East. I don't trust them as of right now to be a team that could go to the Natty. I don't think they're that good at the moment, but I hope they can get better. I am a diehard Hurley guy. I'm trying to think of another team that I've liked. I like this one's my long shot that I've been talking about since the beginning of the season. I love Arkansas. I know they've had a couple skids here and there, but I mean, they're one of the youngest teams in the country. I typically don't like young teams, but you're getting them at like 40-1. They've had some pretty big games, and they've been involved in all the games that they've played in. I think they're worth at least dabbling in if you're interested in any long shots. But other than that, there's no team I'm truly eager to go out and get because of the two top teams that are just not sitting at good odds at the moment.
Yep, exactly. And I do think that that is such a good point by you. And how much when it comes to college basketball, do you just want to be taking a look at something that I mentioned in baseball, and I'm sure that you look at as well, sort of the hot, cold, hot, where you start out the season really strong, you look really good, maybe you had a little bit of a wall towards the middle part of the season, you have some injuries, you face off against a few teams that they get to know you, and then you really try to build up towards back half of the season, because I feel like the dynamic in college basketball has been that for quite a few teams. Look no further than the UConn teams that won the back-to-back national titles. And I do think that now might be a time, if you do like a team, to be able to win a national championship, to perhaps not bet them right now in terms of the future, but maybe fade them for a few games, and then you really start betting them heavily in February and March.
200%. I don't remember what game it was, but I was eager to pull the trigger on Arkansas, and I still haven't done it. And they were lower than they were at the moment. And I was like, I'll wait until they lose, because they're definitely going to lose. They're all freshmen. They're all young. They're due for something. Like, there's so many teams out there right now that I'm just waiting for them to fall. Nebraska, number 1. They got to fall. Number 2 is Miami of Ohio. I thought they were going to fall yesterday as we were recording on Wednesday. I took Kent State on free beer night for the first 500 fans from Coach Sendy. Like, the college jokes were just through the roof, Greg. Like, the full send. I was thinking about it yesterday with Nate, and we were talking about, like, where do we draw the line at, okay, that was too far away to trust? Because now we're at the second half of the season. Do I really want to go back to feast week to weigh in on a team? I mean, you can and you can't. And I'm with you there. We're in conference play. It's very competitive. Somebody's going to fall that you may like it right now, and you could get a better price at.
Yep, I'm right there with you. As Colby Marchio, he does such great work over at Your Betting News. He's joined me right here on Cubs to Cubs Hoops. And when it comes a little bit more to the game-to-game betting side of things for college basketball, what have been some of the things they've been taking a look at in terms of conference play? Because I do think that this time of year is where underdogs really reign supreme. And if you look at what has happened since the beginning of conference play, I think we've had something like 54 to 55% of spreads go the way of underdogs. So they certainly have been fruitful. And it does feel like with some of these underdogs, some of them are just very, very dead. Meanwhile, the teams that they make things a little bit grimier, they do a good job on the boards, they slow things down. Hey, here are the DePaul Blue Demons. They've been playing some solid defense. Those are the sorts of teams that have really been able to make me personally some money here over the last few weeks.
Yeah, just to use them, just Big East as an example, I don't know why I do it. I don't have a reason. I've always said it, though. I think I always said Big East home dogs are usually a good play, just because I always think the Big East, I'm just a homer when it comes to the Big East because I went to DePaul. I just think the Big East is one of the more competitive conferences in college basketball. I mean, this year, not so much. I think there's a massive drop-off from UConn. I mean, who's second is? I don't think St. John's is that good, but they're probably the second best team. This is why I get overly excited, Greg, about DePaul. They should be middle of the pack, if not better, because I think this conference is terrible this year. And then they got Seton Hall. Seton Hall, great. We got to talk about them because I dragged them through the mud last year because they were so horrific offensively. And kudos to their coach. They've fully turned around. They are an all-around fantastic team. They've always been great defensively, but this year turning around from being like the third worst 2-point percentage team in basketball to being just an overall solid team. That's a fun team. Saturday is going to be great against DePaul. It's probably going to be the under because both teams play slow and play great defense. And I don't trust DePaul to have another great offensive game, but hopefully CJ Gunn, fingers crossed, has another big game. But I was talking just in terms of betting perspective. I was talking to my friends today about everyone knows like spots, like letdown spots, get right spot. This team's coming off storming the court. That's an emotional win. The books are catching up, and I got to turn my thought process somewhere else because I got to get rid of that ideology of, okay, this is the spot because this is what's worked before. When we're talking about it now, the books know this, like the unranked home favorites, the books know it's baked in. I think it's getting tougher and tougher as the years go by, but I'm still in love with it, Greg. I could lose every bet. I'm still going to be grinding. I love college hoops. It's the great grind while baseball is taking a nap, but the spots are getting tougher. I'll admit it. I mean, I haven't been doing great, but I got to change my thought process, even though I am fading the Storm tonight and taking Arizona at home against Cincinnati. But fading the Storm is my always system play. If it's team storms, fade them. It's like a 50% hit this season, but it's always been my favorite system play.
It's 50% of the time, 100% of the time, said one person in the great movie Anchorman. I absolutely love it. And Colby, we do have ourselves a lot of fun that's going to be going down on Thursday as well. And I'm not sure how you take a look at Thursdays in college basketball, but I call it the day of steak. You don't have a lot of sizzle. You don't have a lot of ranked teams or anything like that, but you just have good meaty steak. It gets the job done. It provides protein. You can make as much money on these games as you do in those super flashy Tuesday games and everything like that. Is there anything that you might be looking at for Thursday, or even just like a conference that plays on Thursday that you've been looking into a little bit and maybe you've been able to find an angle or two?
Thursdays are usually, I love mid-majors, don't get me wrong. I do love watching them, but in terms of betting, I try not to force anything just because it's a mid-major slate is what I'm trying to say. I see San Diego plays. I see our good friend Doug Gottlieb plays. Thank God he took a step down and he's actually coaching for real this time. I mean, that team used to be a covering juggernaut. I think they're only going to improve. I've been dogging Doug for a while, and I just found what he did disrespectful is why I dragged him. But I think the more he actually takes this job seriously, the team will improve, because last year they were a covering machine and no one was talking about it. I'm more inclined to take the Phoenix. And right now they're 11-7 against the spread, away from home 7-5, and as an underdog 9-7. I mean, they're a decent team coming off a loss to Oakland, and Youngstown has not won a game, it seems like, more than 5 games ago. So maybe, and Youngstown State is a 6.5 point fave. Probably going to have to dive into that one, Greg. It sounds like it's going to be Youngstown State.
The Penguins, and I actually like that game to the over as well, because even though UW Green Bay plays very slowly, they're actually a relatively solid offense, and boy, do they not generate any turnovers whatsoever. Boy, do they not force the issue with regards to rebounding. It's sort of like a make it and take it sort of style. And if this does come down to the spread, which we're seeing at like 5.5 or so, if team's down 5 or 6 with a minute remaining, that means those late game fouls come in, and that helps you out to the over. So we've got a lot of fun to take a look at there. And Colby, I know you're doing such an amazing job looking at this great game of college basketball. You're dialed into a little bit of everything. And I know you're getting set for baseball season, which is going to be starting up in only about 2 or so months with regards to real games. I personally don't bet spring training. If you do, I salute you, but I've never been able to get into spring training personally. That's a real roll of the dice. But that said, let the good people at home know it's all a tap for you and how people can follow along on social media and other platforms.
Yes, all my plays always free, always transparent on my X at Colby M Bets. All my write-ups are free every single day over at bettingnews.com. Baseball is on the way. It's coming. 3 games left in the NFL season, which means baseball season is official after the Super Bowl, in my opinion. I can't wait to look at some futures, Greg. I can't wait to talk to you about our America's pastime and get back on the diamond. But we got college hoops. I'm excited. I'm excited to be here talking about college hoops. Skomans. Skomans forever.
I absolutely love it, and we are going to have ourselves a great next few months in college basketball. And Colby, he is definitely going to be here for it every single time he joins me on Trade Insights, and did so once again today. So big thanks to Colby for joining me on Coast to Coast Hoops, now part of the VSiN family of podcasts. And coming up next, it is that time to podcast and give you picks and analysis out of a game on the betting board for this college basketball Thursday as we eat some bank shots.
Resolutions got you down? Scoop it or swirl it. That's the sound of not giving up. The Ninja Creamy Diet helps you turn protein shakes, vegan milk, and lower sugar recipes into rich, creamy ice cream at home. No skimping on flavor. Eat dessert, hit your macros. Repeat. No sacrifice, no stress. Just ice cream that fits your goals. Treat without the cheat. Start the Ninja Creamy Diet today.
And we're back here, loving Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Hoops Peterson, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. Always great to be joined by Colby Marchio, who does such great work over at Your Betting News, looking at this great game that we all know and love of college basketball. Really does a little bit of everything: football, basketball, baseball. You name it, he does it, and every single time he joins me, lends such great insight. So, big thanks to Kobe for joining me right here on Coast to Coast Hoops, part of the VSiN Family Podcast. And now it is that time of the podcast. I give you picks and analysis on every game on the betting board for this college basketball Thursday as we hit some bank shots.
Most financial establishments close at a certain time, but not here. It is time for a side and total on every game on today's betting board bank shots.
Do note that as per usual, any changes are made to these plays will be listed up on my Twitter/X feed at GNet_D1. We are going to be going in Las Vegas rotation order. This is from what was expected to be the time order. We do have a few games that are going to be moved up because right now we've got storms moving through the country, so hopefully you're all safe there. So it's not going to be an exact time order because there are a few games that are moving around, but on the normal Las Vegas betting board, you get the bigger conferences, and then the America East and the Atlantic Sun games. Those are going to be the games at the bottom. So how about if we do get things started? This is 767, 768. UW Green Bay is on the road against Youngstown St. The Penguins find themselves as a 6 to a 6.5 point favorite. Total on this game, it is between 140.5 to 141.5, and I do like the over. I semi-total 145.5. I fully recognize that this is a UW Green Bay team that is not looking to gun it. In terms of total possessions per game, they do find themselves well outside the top 320, but that said, this is a UW Green Bay team that they sort of play a make it a take it sort of style, top 150 team in terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis on offense. They generate no turnovers whatsoever on defense, as they're 361st in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis. You've got a Youngstown State team that has been okay, not amazing, not terrible with their defense, about 218th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, and a Youngstown State team that is relatively mid-tempo, about a 196th in the country in terms of total possessions per game, and they have been caroling all the way with their top scorer, and Chris Carroll give you about 16.5 points, 5 boards. He shoots 42% from 3, and team as a whole shoots about 34.5% from 3-point range. That's about country average. They've been a little bit better with their interior offense, being the top 100 there, as they have been a top 125 team in terms of offensive rebound percentage, as Emmanuel Zugulov, true 7-footer, is able to give you a pair of blocks, 6.5 points. He's been rock solid, and Vladimir Zardelizde, hopefully I got that correct, comes over from UT Martin, right around about 8.5 points, 4.5 boards. Some good versatility there. I do think that Green Bay is going to be able to cover this number, though, even though this Green Bay team grabs no offensive rebounds whatsoever. They are well outside the top 340 in terms of percentage of their missed shots that result in an offensive rebound. This is a group that has been able to do a pretty rock solid job in terms of their interior offense. They as well have been a top 100 team with regards to their 2-point shooting percentage. Now you've got a quartet of guys: Preston Rudinger, Marcus Hall, CJ O'Hara, and Justin Allen all give you between 11.4 and 13.5 points per contest. Lone guy that gives you over 4.5 rebounds per game is Marcus Hall, but he shoots 39.5% from 3-point range. It is a UW Green Bay team that has been relatively okay in terms of keeping teams off the free throw line, and they themselves have been a top 90 team in terms of free throw attempts on a per possession basis. And even though UW Green Bay doesn't grab any sort of second and third chances, they have been a top 150 team in terms of defensive rebound percentage, so they're not allowing opponents to be able to grab those second and third chances. If you do find yourself in a little bit of a tight spot, it is the Youngstown St team that they shoot about 72% of the free throw line. Both teams are equals there, so I do think that you're going to get a bit of scoring in this game, good offensive efficiency. Semi-total 145.5. I like the over, and with Green Bay, won't take 6+ with them. 769, 770 on the card. Louisiana is on the road against Appalachian St, and Appalachian St does find themselves as a pretty good-sized favorite here of 8.5 to 9.5 points. 122.5 to 123 is the total, and I believe that this is one of the games that are going to be one of the afternoon games that we get on Thursday. I think that this got moved by the storm. Really doesn't affect my handicap too much. I said Appalachian St is a 9.5 point favorite, so I'm willing to lay up to 9 with them. You are going to get an absolute slog of a game here. Appalachian St is 353rd in the country in terms of total possessions per game. Louisiana is 363rd, so yay, verily there. And you've got an Appalachian St team that is going to look to really just pound this Louisiana team that is taking a lot of threes. Like, Louisiana is actually a top 65 team in terms of percentage of their shots that come from 3, and they're really not hitting too many of them. This should be a relatively clean game. You got a pair of teams that are well outside the top 275 in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis, and Appalachian State does a great job in terms of taking care of the ball. But for Louisiana right now, 247th of the country in terms of their 3-point shooting percentage, and ever since Jamarian Keller, the transfer from Oklahoma State, went down with injury, it's just been a unmitigated disaster for this Louisiana bunch. As you've got two guys, Ryan Finster, Jackson Oliveira, who combine for about 25.5 points per game. And for Finster, he does shoot 38% from three and throws in their 5 rebounds per game, but he's also the lone guy on the roster that gives you over 4 rebounds per game. And Appalachian St should be able to take this team down low. As for this Louisiana team, they're great. They force things to the inside. They've been a top 175 team in terms of 2-point shooting percentage. They're also outside the top 3 in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage. So they have not been doing a great job there. It's an Appalachian St team that has Luke Wilson. You know, he was not the star out there in old school, but 10.5 points, 7.5 boards per contest. Michael Marcus has stepped up in a big way. He's been able to give you about 6 rebounds per game. And then the Dodd father, Alonzo Dodd and Kassan Jennings, combining for about 20.5 points per game. These two guys, between the two of them, shoot 36% from 3 now. Big reason why I couldn't set this line any higher is that Appalachian St shoots 61.1% at the free throw line, which is dead stinking last in all of college basketball, but they do a nice job taking care of the ball. They've been a top 125 team in terms of their 2-point shooting percentage. They don't allow opponents to be able to get good looks on the inside. As a matter of fact, they're a top 175 team in terms of opponents' 2-point and 3-point shooting percentage. Do feel like the total is a little bit too low because I do think that Appalachian State going to get some good looks at the bucket. They are a top 150 team in terms of offensive rebound percentage as well and get the job done. Somebody total 125.5. I'm going to be willing to lay up to 9 here with App State, and I'm going to be in on the over. 771, 772. Campbell is on the road against Charleston, and Charleston finds themselves as a favorite of 3.5 to 4.5 points. 158.5 to 160.5 is the total, and I made a total of 156.5. I do like the under. You've got a Campbell team that's really cranked up their tempo, 132nd in the country. In terms of total possessions per game, John Andrewchuk taking over as coach has been a big reason why. In Charleston, right now they're 139th in the country. In terms of total possessions per game, you do want to note that that's a little bit of a warped stat. Their last game, either that or 2 games ago, they played that just crazy, insane, multiple overtime game against Stony Brook, so that throws things a little bit out of whack. And it is a Charleston team that's much better on offense than they were at the beginning part of the season. That's a big reason why I did set them as a 6.5 point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay it, especially with Campbell just not doing themselves a lot of favors. Outside the top 3 in terms of ball security, they turn the ball over 13.5 times per contest. Now, you've got a Charleston team that is going to have to match up with DJ Turnup Smith, who shoots 36% from 3, 28.5 points per contest, and to the credit of Campbell, they give themselves good second and third chances, top 85 team in terms of offensive rebound percentage. Chris Fields Jr. and W. Deus Butka combined for 18.3 rebounds per game. Between the two of them, you're able to get about 27.5 points per contest, but I mean, it's a little bit of a top-heavy team as well that is looking to push that tempo, and for Charleston, they now have back in the full Kobe Duggan, who he was over at Campbell last season, and ever since he has gone back into the lineup after dealing with injury for the first part of the season, 12.5 points, pair of assists per contest from 3-point range, only shooting about 33% from 3, but for a Charleston team that's only shooting 29.5% from the outside, they're outside the top 345 in all of college basketball there. That's a sign of improvement, and I do think that Charleston is going to see that 3-point shooting rebound as you had out of the fold to begin the season, Connor Hickman, who's been able to give you about 13 points per contest. They're still dealing with the injury to Mr. Dean, but with Martin Kalu, give you about 4.5 boards, 10.5 points per contest, shooting in the mid-30s from 3. Having a guy in Christian Reeves down low is able to give you 6+ rebounds per game. I do think that this Charleston team is going to be able to take hold of this game, and it is a Charleston team that has been in the top 185 in terms of opponents' 2-point and 3-point shooting percentage. They're not going to put you under duress and generate too many turnovers. They're outside the top 3 in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis, but I just don't think that this Campbell team executes on offense. So my line at 6.5, I'm going to be willing to lay with Charleston, and I'm going to be in on this total under as well. Sub 73, sub 74. James Madison is playing host to South Alabama. South Alabama, an underdog of 3.5 points. Throughout this game, 137.5, and I made South Alabama the 1.5 point favorite. I like them outright on the money line. This South Alabama team just dares you to shoot from 3. Over 61% of opponents' field goal attempts come from 3-point range. That is numero uno in all of college basketball. And it's a James Madison team that has been solid with their 3-point shooting. Not amazing, but still right around about 66th in the country in terms of 3-point shooting percentage. Actually goes down to 34.9% at home compared to 36.5% in a roadside shoot core venue, but what has typically been the forte of Preston Spradlin teams in terms of rebounding, that just has not been the case for James Madison this year. Currently, in terms of their overall rebound percentage, James Madison is right now checking in 220th in all of college basketball. So Eddie Ricks, who's able to give between about 6.5 to 7 rebounds per game, but you're not going to get a lot of looks at the free throw line either. As for South Alabama, they're a top 5 team in terms of fewest free throws allowed on a per possession basis, and for this James Madison team, they are outside the top 200 with regards to their own 2-point shooting percentage. Justin McBride, Cliff Davis, Davis, Bradley Douglas. This has been a big three that has combined to shoot about 37% or so from three-point range. You've got Davis giving you about 12.5 points per contest, McBride 16.5 points, 5.5 boards, and then Douglas, your main facilitator, 4.5 assists, 13 points per game, and for James Madison, they've been able to do an okay job. Top 175 team in terms of points scored on a per possession basis on offense, but they are not generating any turnovers whatsoever. South Alabama is going to be able to get what they want because James Madison, outside the top 350 in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis, and exactly what South Alabama wants is to make things slow and controlled. Overall, South Alabama is 277th in terms of total possessions per game, but if you take overtime out of the mix in terms of possessions per 40 minutes, they are outside the top 300, and for South Alabama, they've been able to get a lot of production out of Chaz Harris, 18 points, 4.5 boards, steal and a half per contest, and with this South Alabama team, they have been a solid team, a top 125 team in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis. This is a unit that they personally look to pile drive the ball inside. They've been a top 175 team in terms of their own 2-point shooting percentage. Adam Olson has been a big part of this team, 87% free throw line, 38.5% 3-point shooter with about 16 points per game, and then those ancillary guys like Randy Brady is able to give you 4.5 points, throws in there a little bit over a steal per contest. I do think that gets the job done against a James Madison team that I think that they're going to have a tough time going against a South Alabama team that they dare you to shoot it from three. Teams are only shooting about 31% from three against them all season long, and I think that South Alabama just throws James Madison for a loop. I said I total at a 135.5, so I'm going to be on the under, and I like South Alabama here outright on the money line. 775, 776. Monmouth is on the road against Hampton. Hampton is a 1 to a 1.5 point favorite. 133.5 is the total, and I said Hampton is a 1.5 point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay up to 1 with them. It all comes down to what you're able to get in terms of the interior with these two offenses. And for Monmouth, right now they're 316th in the country in terms of their own 2-point shooting percentage. Hampton is not necessarily amazing, but I mean they're up to about 261st. But if you look at Hampton in their home games, they do shoot about 58.4% from 2-point range at home. That ascends into the top 150 in all of college basketball. And they go up against a Monmouth team that has been a really good team in terms of their interior defense. That's because you've got a guy in Doc Mortar who's been able to give you about a block and a half per contest. So he throws in there about 4.5 points, 3 rebounds per game, but has been solid there. Jason Rivera-Torres, your top scorer, 15 points, 8 boards, 2 steals per contest. He throws in there a block and a half per contest as well, but also with this Monmouth team, they have been one that has been a little bit lackadaisical with their 3-point shooting percentage, offense and defense. They both shoot 34.2% from 3-point range, and they allow teams to shoot 34.2% from 3. And to their credit, they've been a top 100 team in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis. You've got some nice ancillary guys. Andrew Ball is able to give you like 8 points, 4 boards. Jack Collins, 7 points, 5 rebounds, 5.5 assists. So, I mean, these guys have been working really well in tandem. And if you look at Hampton in non-conference play versus conference play, they have been a much improved team here in conference play, not a team that's going to light you up from 3-point range. Right now in conference play, they're shooting 23.1% from 3. I'm of the belief that we should see a little bit of positivity there, but they've been doing a great job on the rebound front. In conference play, they're only turning the ball over about 9.2 times per contest as well. And then you have in the backcourt a pair of guys in Shaquille Gaines-Wyatt along with Michael Ely, who have been able to combine for a little bit over 25 points per contest. Ely was dealing with a little bit of injury, but he's coming off of a 43 spot in a game about a week or so ago. And then Xavier Long, good versatility, 9.5 points, 10.5 rebounds per game. It's a Hampton team that is okay in terms of generating turnovers, country average there, but they don't allow good looks from 3-point range. Top 125 team in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage. They become a top 175 team in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. Do think that you get a little bit more of a defense-oriented game, but I do think that this game is close enough for late game fouling, doing just enough for you to get the over. I did set my total at a 135.5, so I like the over with Hampton. I think that they have just enough to be able to get the job done. I'm willing to lay a point with them. 777, 778 on the card. Wisconsin is on the road against Penn State. Penn State is a home underdog here of 5.5 points. Thought this game 159.5 to 160.5, and made Wisconsin the 4.5 point favorite. So at 5+, I'm going to be willing to take a shot here on Penn State. Penn State has done a nice job in terms of really slowing themselves down from past years. 289th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. By far the slowest mark under Coach Mike Rhodes. Wisconsin 89th in terms of total possessions per game. By far their highest rate in terms of total possessions per game in like 2 decades. And it's a Wisconsin team that they just have not been the same offense when they've been away from home rather than at home. Overall, they're about 59th in the country in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, but when they're away from home, they do score about 17 points fewer per 100 possessions than when they are at home. And you've got a Penn State team that has been really good in terms of generating turnovers. 44th in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis in their home games. Now, Penn State shoots 37.1% from 3-point range away from home, 30.6% at home. I think that that's going to iron out a little bit in. what you know about this Wisconsin team is that they're actually going to do a really good job with the little things. They're not allowing teams to be able to grab second and third chances, which you're not going to get that with Penn State anyway. Penn State does not have a single guy that gives you over 4.5 rebounds per game, but that said, it's Wisconsin team that's about 246th in terms of their offensive rebound percentage, so they're not getting a lot of second and third chances. They're 15th in terms of defensive rebound percentage. They're allowing teams to only grab about 23.1% of their misses as an offensive rebound, and for Wisconsin, you got those two main headline scores. John Blackwell, Nick Boyd, they combine for 38.5 points per contest. Blackwell shoots 38.5% for three, and then Nolan Winter is making it feel like Winter for a lot of teams. 14 points, 8.5 boards, a block. He shoots 34.5% from three, but outside those guys, it's really just a mismatch of a lot of guys that give you like 6. In the case of Austin Rapp, about 8.5 points per contest. And for Penn State, what they do a really good job of is making sure that they get clean possessions. Top 25 team in terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis, headlined by a pair of freshmen and Malai Tunka along Kata Mingo. Mingo, 15 points, 2.5 steals, doesn't shoot it well from three, but gives you 4.5 assists, 1.6 turnovers per game. Tunka shoots 38% for three, 9.5 points per contest, and right now, the lone guy that gives you over 4 rebounds per game, that'd be Ivan Juric, who's been able to give you about 4.2 boards, 9 points per contest, but Freddie De Leon has been able to step up to the plate for this team. It is a Penn State team that has been rough with their three-point shooting defense outside the top 3 are there, but I do think that they're going to be able to generate some turnovers. I do think that this is going to be a little bit of a sloppier game, and Penn State keeps you off the free throw line. They're a top 40 team in terms of free throw attempts allowed on a per possession basis, and Wisconsin may very much be at the free throw line. They're a top 25 team with their free throw shooting percentage. So set a total here of a 154.5. I like the under and 5+ here with Penn State. 779, 780 on the card. UW Milwaukee is going to be on the road against Robert Morris, and old Bobby Morris is a mid-tier favorite here of 5 to 5.5 points. Tallest game, 149.5. I'm in on the under. It's up by total 148.5. You just have a really banged up UW Milwaukee team right now. Like, your top scorer has been out of the fold for quite a while, and the MAC transfer, Seth Hubbard, he was averaging 16.5 points per contest, but now you're down your 2 main forwards as well. Daniil Jovanovic, who was averaging 12.5 points, 6 rebounds per game, has been missing the last 3 games. Faison Fields, 6 boards, 7.5 points per game. He's been missing the last 5 games, and other than that game against IU Indy, where they needed a miracle to cover that one, they just have been rough recently. They scored 82 points against Fort Wayne, but gave up 100 there. They scored 60 points on an Oakland defense that's absolutely deplorable. I did set my total here at a 148.5. I'm in on the under because I don't think that you're going to get a lot of possessions in this game. It's a UW Milwaukee team that's about 181st in the country in terms of total possessions per game. Robert Morris about 217th, but this Robert Morris team is going to be able to eat UW Milwaukee alive. UW Milwaukee's big edge this year has been on the glass. They have been a top 100 team with regards to overall rebound percentage, top 50 team in terms of offensive rebound percentage. Now you don't have those guys out there, and Robert Morris, number 10 in the country in terms of percentage of their missed shots that result in an offensive rebound. The kryptonite for Robert Morris is turnovers, 280th in the country in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis on offense, but UW Milwaukee, they're outside the top 3 in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis. So that means that you get more clean possessions for this bunch. That as Ryan Prather now give you 14.5 points per contest, was rough to begin the season with regards to his 3-point shooting, back into the mid-30s now. Deshaun Good has been very good. He's shooting 62% for 3. That'll fall off a little bit, but 15 points, 9 rebounds out of him. Nikolas Shatakulis down low about 11 points, 7 rebounds per game, and with this Robert Morris team, they're a team that has been very good in terms of forcing things inside. They're a top 75 team in terms of percentage of opponent shots that do come from 2-point range. You've got a UW Milwaukee team that is right now outside the top 225 with regards to their own 2-point shooting percentage. Now you're going to rely upon Amar Ulyagard, 13 points, 2.5 rebounds per game to really headline the offense. You've got Stevie Elam, who's been able to shoot about 35% for 3, 8.5 points per contest, but just being down so much rebounding for this UW Milwaukee team, I think that's really going to take it out of them, and the second and third chances that they were getting on offense no longer there. So set my line at 8.5. I'm willing to lay with the Robert Morris, and I'm in on the under. Set my total 148.5. 781, 782 on the card. You've got Southern Miss on the road against Georgia State, and Georgia State finds themselves as a slim favorite in a lot of spots of 1 to 1.5 points. They open up as the underdog, so starting to see a flipper-rooney here. Total on this game, you're finding it between 142.5 to a 143.5, and I just set my total 141.5. I do like the under, mainly because Georgia State is right now 39th in the country in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, but for as bad as this Georgia State offense has been all season long, it's gotten better recently. They've actually been able to score 80-plus points in 4 out of their last 5 games, and much of the reason why the offense was so deplorable to start the season, they were dealing with an injury to Jelani Hamilton for 5 games. That is by far their top scorer, 17.5 points, 4 boards. He shoots 37.5% from 3-point range. You only have really 2 other guys on the roster that shoot about 32.5% from 3-point range, and for Georgia State. They're just not executing inside. They've been outside the top 355 in terms of their 2-point shooting percentage. Here's what they do well, though. They are a team that shoots 78.3 or so percent at the free throw line. They are number 8 in all of college basketball. In Southern Miss, they are 276th in the country in terms of free throw attempts allowed on a per possession basis on defense. And it's not like the Southern Miss team has battened down the hatches in terms of their offense as well. It's a Southern Miss team that they play with an okay tempo, 164th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. Georgia State right there about 150th. But for the Southern Miss team, they have not been able to knock down their threes. They're outside the top 345, shooting less than 30% from three-point range in terms of total points scored on a per possession basis. It's a Southern Miss team that's checking in 224th as they like to pile drive the ball inside, and they've been a top 175 team in terms of points scored on a per possession basis away from home. But for Southern Miss, name of the game for them is trying to be able to grab second and third chances. But now with Isaac Tavares, their number 2 scorer and one of only 3 guys on the roster that gives you over 3 rebounds per game, still out of the fold, that really hurts them. As for Southern Miss, they are currently a top 150 team in terms of offensive rebound percentage. If you look at them in a road/neutral court venue, they grab about 32.7% of their misses as an offensive rebound. That's actually a top 60 mark in all of college basketball. But now you're having to really rely upon Talik Weeks, who's been able to give you 18 points, 6 boards, pair of assists. He shoots 8.3% per 3. He doesn't attempt a lot of threes, but I mean, that's really the lone guy other than Dejai Benoit, who's been able to give you over 9 points per contest. Benoit, about 9 points, 7 rebounds. He's been able to do a rock solid job down low, but you have absolutely no pop from the outside for this team. You additionally have a Southern Miss team that has been turning the ball over too much. They're outside the top 275 in terms of their own ball security. Now, this is not a Georgia State defense by any stretch of the imagination. That's going to put you under duress. They're about a country average team in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis. But what Georgia State does a good job of, their 2-point shooting percentage. They are a team that can be hurt from 3-point range. They've been outside the top 235 in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage, but the team has been able to do a nice job in terms of just holding up on the inside. Georgia State 101st in the country in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage. This is a Southern Miss team that they're about 131st there. They get hurt much more from the outside, and with having Jelani Hamilton back at the fold with this Georgia State team being able to hit their free throws, I do think that they get the job done in a little bit of sloppier games. Semi-total 141.5. I like the under, and with Georgia State, I'm going to be willing to make them the favorite of 3.5 points, so willing to lay this number, 783, 784. UAB is going to be playing against South Florida. South Florida, in this case, is a 2.5 point favorite. 166.5 to 167.5 is the total, and for UAB, I made them a favorite of 2 points. I'm going to be willing to take them on the money line. Now, this UAB team is not shooting well from 3-point range whatsoever. Right now, from 3-point range, they shoot as a collective less than 30.5%. That is outside the top 335 in all of college basketball. That said, they don't take a lot of threes. They take the 8th lowest percentage of shots from 3-point range in all of college basketball, and they maximize what they're able to do on the glass. This is a bunch of 17th in the country in terms of defensive rebound percentage. Teams are only grabbing 23.4% of their misses as an offensive rebound. South Florida, they rely upon second and third chances. This team is 38th in the country in terms of offensive rebound percentage. UAB, a pretty solid defense down low as well. A top 130 team in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage with South Florida. This has been a unit that has been a little bit up down all around with regards to their defense. They are a team that ranks 47th in the country overall in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage, but you take them away from home, and that falls outside the top 150. So I do think that UAB is going to do a nice job there. And additionally, for UAB, numero uno in all of college basketball in terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis. So they're maximizing these possessions with Chance Westry being your main scorer. He and Jacob Meyer have been able to combine for 29.1 points per contest. Between the two of them, they only shoot about 30% from 3. But you also have Meyer in a pressure spot shooting 89% at the free throw line. With Westry, generates a steal and a half per contest. It's a UAB team that they're about a country average team in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis, neither here nor there, and they're a team that's pretty pedestrian, not great, not terrible in terms of guarding the 3-point line. This has been a South Florida team that has shot it pretty well from 3-point range overall for the season, about 34% country average. You've got Wes Enos along Joseph Pignon, who've been able to combine to shoot about 37.5% from 3. Between the two of them, you get 29 points per contest. Joshua Majafo, about 14 points per game. He's shooting in the low 30s from 3, but gives you 5 boards, 2.5 assists per contest, and CJ Brown, 5.3 assists and 2.2 turnovers per game. And for South Florida, to their credit, they've been a top 55 team in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis. But that said, I do think that for South Florida, going to have a little bit of issue here now. It's a South Florida team that's looking to gun it. They're number 2 in the country in terms of total possessions per game, but a few overtime games were thrown in there, so they're a little bit slower than that. And UAB has been 43rd as well, but I do think the UAB just going to be able to execute their stuff. I think that South Florida is not going to be able to get those scoring chances that they typically do on the glass, and that allows UAB to get the job done. So by total 164, so I'm in on the under, and I like UAB here on the money line. 785, 786, Coastal Carolina. They play to Texas State. Texas State does the Texas 2.5 step as they're 2.5 point underdogs. So last game 140 to 139.5, and I did set a total here of a 142.5, so I'm going to be in on this total over. And with Texas State, I did make them a 2.5-point underdog. I'm seeing some 2s out there. I wouldn't want to go past a 2 with Coastal Carolina, but I'm going to be willing to lay. You've got a pair of teams that are relatively mid-tempo with Texas State about 181st in the country in terms of total possessions per game. Coastal Carolina up to about 147th, but Coastal Carolina is doing an incredible job with their interior defense. They are 14th in the country in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage, and the reason why that's so significant, Texas State attempts the highest percentage of shots from 2-point range in all of college basketball, and this is a Texas State team that is incredibly sloppy with the ball. In terms of turnovers on a per possession basis, 345th in all of college basketball. Now, good news for them, Coastal Carolina outside the top 330 in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis, but they should still be able to win this turnover battle. As for Coastal Carolina, they are 38th in the country in terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis. It's a Coastal Carolina group that has a pair of really good guards in Joshua Beadle along with Rashid Jones, who would be able to combine for about 29 or so points per contest. And on the flip side for Texas State, you've got a duo in DJ Hall and Mark Drone that combine for about 27 points per game. And Drone does shoot 34.5% from 3. Texas State, for as few threes as they take, they're not a terrible 3-point shooting team at 33%. It's not like they're lighting the world on fire, but they're not terrible there. And this is a Texas State team that should be able to win the battle on the glass. They've been a top 125 team in terms of their overall rebound percentage, with Hall being able to give you 7.5 rebounds per game. Kendall Davis, he's been a nice versatile piece, 6 points, 4.5 boards, still with a little bit of injury, but should be good to go here. And Texas State, for as many turnovers as they cause, they are a team that is a top 85 team in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis as well. So we're going to have a little bit of dueling styles here, but for Coastal Carolina, I do think that they're going to be able to do a solid job holding up down low with having Reggie Hill be able to give you 6.5 points, 5.5 rebounds per game. Angie Dantzler, he's been able to give you 14.5 points, pair of assists, 5.5 rebounds. It is a Coastal Carolina team that they themselves shoot about 33.5% from 3, and they've been awful with their interior offense. They're well outside the top 320 with regards to their own 2-point shooting percentage, but not allowing teams to be able to grab second and third chances with them being able to take care of the ball. I do think that that's going to be just enough in this case to be able to get the job done. So did somebody total of 142.5. I think that Texas State being able to get more clean possessions in this game, this perhaps being a game that comes down to late game fouling, helps you out with the total. So in on the over, and I'm willing to lay up to a deuce here with Coastal Carolina, 787, 780 on the card. It's Merrimack on the road against Iona. Iona finds themselves here as a very slim underdog of 1.5 points. 145.5 is the total. I said Iona is a 7.5 point favorite. I'm going to be willing to take a shot on them outright on the money line. This Merrimack team is going to get rolled on the glass. Out of 365 Division I teams, they are 364th with regards to rebound percentage. Now, Merrimack's still a solid team in terms of generating turnovers, hovering right around about 64th in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis, but this is a team that under Joey Gallo, every year that they've been at the Division I level, they've been a top 45 team, so they've taken a little bit of a drop off there. It's not like this is some sort of a magical shooting team. They're outside top 275 in terms of both their 2-point and 3-point shooting percentage. Now, you do have two headline scorers. Ernest Shelton, 15.9 points, shoots 36.5% from 3. KVR Kennedy shoots 41% from 3, 16.5 points per contest, but Kennedy takes less than a 3 per contest, and this is an Iona team that is going to do a really good job in terms of guarding the arc against a Merrimack team that they're looking to take a lot of their shots from 3-point range. This Iona team, a top 45 team in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage at less than 31%, and you look at the percentage of shots for Merrimack that come from 3-point range, that's 47.3%. That is a top 45 mark in all of college basketball, and I think that that really helps out Iona. And then additionally for Iona, you've got CJ Anthony, the transfer from Cincinnati, who's been on to giving the team 14.5 points, 5.5 assists. He shoots 40% from 3. Toby Harris shoots 41% from 3 with 12 points per contest. It is a Merrimack team that can be had a little bit from the outside, and it's an Iona team that typically they get bludgeoned on the glass, but in this case, they actually have the advantage there. And with this Iona team, they are shooting just 69% of the free throw line. That's a little bit of a, shall we say, issue in a pressure spot. Merrimack, with regards to their free throw shooting, is more around about 74%, but that said, this is a Merrimack team that I think that they're just going to have a very, very difficult time on the glass. Merrimack does a good job in terms of taking care of the ball, but they're not going to be able to get those good looks from 3, and Merrimack playing super slow, outside the top 340 in terms of total possessions per game, so set a total of 137.5. I like Iona on the money line, and I'm in on the under, 789, 790 on the card. Stony Brook is going to be on the road against Northeastern, and Northeastern does find themselves as a bit of a favorite here. You're going to be laying with them between 3.5 to 4 points. So on this game, 149 to 149.5, made a total of 144.5. I'm going to be in on the under now. Northeastern is well outside the top 235 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, and they've bumped up their tempo a little bit. 133rd in the country in terms of total possessions per game. Stony Brook is playing very slowly, 279th in the country in terms of total possessions per game overall, but you take a look at Stony Brook in a road/Hitchcourt venue, they are a bottom 30 team in terms of total possessions per game. As a matter of fact, a bottom 20 team in terms of total possessions per game, so I think they get a nice sloppy game here. Now, I did set Northeastern as a favorite of 4.5 points. points. I do think that they get the job done. I'm going to be willing to lay the number, mainly because for the Stony Brook team, they just can't really get their interior offense going. They're outside the top 3 with regards to their own 2-point shooting percentage. They fail to get to the free throw line. They're outside the top 275 in terms of free throw attempts on a per possession basis. So they do have perhaps the best scorer in this game in Eric Pratt, 19.5 points, 3.5 assists, steal per contest. He shoots about 31% from 3, but around him you've got a pair of guys in Hot Rob Brown along with Andrei Strjajevic. He has absolutely no vowels in his last name. I have no idea. I'm going to call him Andre here. That combined for about 19 points per contest. They combined to shoot about 40% from 3-point range. And then Richard Goods does deliver the goods with about 6.3 boards, 7.5 points per contest, but he is the lone guy on the roster right now. That gives you over 4.3 rebounds per game. And Northeastern is not some sort of a great rebounding team by any stretch of imagination. This bunch in terms of offensive rebound percentage is outside the top 265 in all of college basketball, but that said, they have been a top 125 team in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis. They've really had a kryptonite down low of being outside the top 320 in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage, and Stony Brook not going to be able to take too much advantage of that. They've to deal with L.A. Pratt being out with injury for this Northeastern offense, but stepping up in his absence, William Kamori, who's been able to shoot 45.5% from 3, 12 points per contest. And it is a Stony Brook team that's been really good with regards to their interior defense. They're a top 50 team in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage, but this is a Northeastern team that, even though they do take quite a few of their shots from inside the 3-point line, they're a team that is able to go bombs away from 3-point range right now for this Northeastern team from 3-point range. They've been shooting more in that neighborhood of about 34.8% from 3-point range. Actually goes down to about 33.1% in their home games, but I do think that they are going to be able to find a way to persevere here. Northeastern at a pressure spot. They shoot about 70.5% at the free throw. You've got a Stony Brook team that if they are pushed to the free throw line and they don't get to their free throw line offense, they shoot about 69.5% at the free throw line. And with this Stony Brook team having to match up with a guy in Yori Fritz, who gives you 11.5 points, 4.5 boards, good versatility. He's able to pop it from 3, gives you a steal on the block per contest. I do think that Northeastern finds a way to persevere, get the job done. One to lay up to fork here with Northeastern, semi-total 144.5, also in on the under. 791, 792 on the card. It is UNC Wilmington, and they are going to be on the road against William and Mary. You don't just get William, you don't just get Mary, but you get both, and you're going to be getting with them 1.5 points in some spots. Other spots, they're the 1-point favorite. So last game, 156.5 to 157.5. I said Wilmington as a 4.5 point favorite. I do like them here on the money line / as a very, very slim favorite, mainly because I think that they're going to be able to control things on the inside. You've got a William and Mary team that has been incredible with their 3-point shooting defense. Top 25 team in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage, and for William and Mary, this has been a unit that's been really good in terms of generating turnovers. 19th in the country in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis, and William and Mary, they're not going to be put under duress by a Wilmington team that's only about 279th in the country in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis, and that has been a kryptonite for this William and Mary team. They have been a team that's been turning the ball over quite a bit. They're about 252nd in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis on offense, but for this William and Mary team, they're not necessarily the greatest 3-point shooting team this season. They're clocking in about 225th in the country in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage, and they're just going to be eaten for lunch down low. This is a William and Mary team that is 314th in the country in terms of offensive rebound percentage. UNC Wilmington is 23rd. In games played away from home, they grab 35.7% of their missed shots as an offensive rebound. That is a top 15 mark in all of college basketball, and you just have a really nice collective of guys. I like to call them the CAA Avengers because they brought in a whole bunch of guys from within the conference. Madison Durr, who was over at Monmouth, has given you about 12 points per contest. Nolan Hodge is one who remain holdovers with about 15.5 points per contest, but Christian May comes over from Towson. He's been able to give you about 9.5 points per contest. Gavin Walsh has come in there, giving you 9.5 points, 6.5 rebounds. Patrick Wessler, a true 7-footer who comes over from Virginia Tech, has been able to do a nice job being able to throw in there 6+ rebounds per game as well. Actually, closer to 9 rebounds to go along with 13 points per game. And I think that William & Mary is going to have a really tough time being able to match up with that. And William & Mary is a team that has a lot of depth. You've got a lot of guys that have just been able to do a nice job knowing their role. As a matter of fact, if you look, you've got pretty much 9 different guys. They give you between 5.6 and 12.2 points per contest, with 5 different guys between 9.5 and 12.2 points per contest, with Tunde Valbi Fasasi give you 12 points. He's your main scorer, shooting about 34.9% from 3. But for a team that's based around 3-point shooting, each of your top 5 scorers do shoot less than 34.5% from 3. With the sloppiness of this team and the way that Wilmington is going to be able to control the boards, and it is a bunch that has been really good with regards to their interior offense, with William & Mary, this is actually a top 50 team with regards to their 2-point shooting percentage, but you've got a Wilmington team that they have been a top 85 team in terms of their 2-point shooting percentage, defense as well. They do a pretty solid job keeping teams off the free throw line, and I do think that Wilmington wins this game from within. I did set a total year of a 154.5. I'm going to be in on the under. You've got a Wilmington team that's outside the top 275 in terms of total possessions per game, and I do think that they dictate the terms of this one, so taking Wilmington as either a very, very slight favorite or an underdog, and I'm going to be in on the under. 783, 784 on the card. Quinnipiac is on the road against Mount St. Mary's, and the Mount finds themselves as 4.5 to 5.0 home underdogs. This game it is 147.5, and with Mount St. Mary's, I did set them as an underdog of 5 points. So at a 4.5, I'm going to be willing to lay with Quinnipiac. Quinnipiac has been dealing with a few injuries, but Amari Monroe should be all good to go in this game, and he has been a very versatile piece for this bunch. He supplies about 7.5 boards, 15 points per game. Their top scorer, Jaden Zimmerman, was missing for quite a bit of time, but now he's back, and he's given the team 15 plus points at each out of the last 4 games that he's played in ever since coming off of injury. So he's all good to go there. He's been at 35% 3-point shooter for a Quinnipiac team that all of a sudden is shooting about 36.5% from 3-point range. They were not great with that regard last season, and for Quinnipiac, they additionally are a team that should be able to control the boards in this game. They're a top 90 team in terms of their offensive rebound percentage, and for Mount St. Mary's, just a lot of sloppiness with this team. They're a team that is outside the top 275 in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis, bottom 5 team in terms of taking care of the ball. They don't give themselves second and third chances. At home, they're outside the top 200 with regards to their offensive rebound percentage, and for this bunch, you do have a guy that I really like in Xavier Lipscomb. Lipscomb, he does a little bit of everything, right around about 5 boards, 5 assists, 12 points per contest, a relatively good mid-30s 3-point shooter. And then Orlando Keys, along with Luke McElden, they have been able to both give you between 11 to 12 points per contest, with McElden, your main rebounder, with about 6 rebounds per contest. But, I mean, this is a Mount St. Mary's team that they fail to get to the free throw line. They're outside the top 200 with regards to their own 2-point shooting percentage. They do a good job in terms of guarding things on the inside. They've been a top 75 team in terms of 2-point shooting percentage of opponents, but that said, with Quinnipiac, them being able to shoot it as well as they do from 3-point range, with this being such a sloppy Mount St. Mary's team, and even if Mount St. Mary's finds itself in a close game, they shoot 67.1% at the free throw line. That is well outside the top 320 in all of college basketball. It's a Quinnipiac bunch that they themselves leave something to be desired at 69.9%, but it's much more trustworthy in this spot. The way that you're really able to get to this Quinnipiac team is that they're outside the top 225 in terms of opponent's 3-point shooting percentage, but it's a Mount St. Mary's team that really doesn't do a great job with that regard either, and with this Quinnipiac team in the top 135 in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis. Do think that you get a little bit more of a sloggy game. Quinnipiac is about 118th of the country in terms of total possessions per game. Mount St. Mary's about 193rd. Set a total of a 143. So I'm in on the under with Quinnipiac. I'm willing to lay up to 4.5 with them. 785, 786. Canisius is on the road against Sacred Heart. Sacred Heart, a pretty mid-tier favorite here. You're going to be laying with them 9 to 9.5 points. 143.5 is the total. Semi-total out of 142. I do like the under. Canisius, one of the slowest teams you're going to find in all of college basketball. In terms of total possessions per game, out of 365 Division I teams, they're a nice hearty 358th, and with the Sacred Heart team, even though they're bad on defense, they're well outside the top 275 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. Not necessarily a fast team, 203rd in the country in terms of total possessions per game. Sacred Heart has been a good rebound rate team. They grab about 34.3% of their missed shots as an offensive rebound, and their metrics would be a little bit better if it wasn't for the fact that they were missing Anquan Hill for quite a bit of time. Hill is a guy that stands between 6'8" and 6'9". Last year shot over 40% from 3. This year that's been down to about 29% from the outside, but ever since he's come off of injury in Metro Atlantic play, he's been able to get back above 30%, so that's been big. And then your next top 3 scorers in conference play, Niall Ralph Byer, Jan Farrell, and Deshaun Giddens, they're all shooting at least 43% from 3-point range in Metro Atlantic play. Overall for the season, Farrell and Byer both above 43% for the entirety of the season, and you've been able to have Mekhi Connor give you about 6 assists per contest for a Sacred Heart team that they are outside the top 250 in terms of ball security. They turn the ball over about 13 times per contest, but if you do find this Sacred Heart team in a pressure spot, they also have been a top 20 team with their free throw shooting percentage at 78%. Now, they don't get to the free throw line very often, and they have been outside the top 275 in terms of both opponents' 2-point and 3-point shooting percentage for Canisius. You don't necessarily have that go-to scorer like you had in Paul McMillan from a season ago, but you've been able to have 13.5 points per contest out of Khalil Singleton, 12.5 out of Brian Nadanja. These guys have been rock solid and both shoot above 37.5% from 3-point range. They combine to shoot over 80% at the free throw line as well, but not a lot around them. You've only got 2 other guys that give you over 4.9 points per contest. Marcus Iblack is one of them, and he's out with injury, and Michael Everbrow, 8 points, 6 rebounds per game. He's been able to do a rock solid job there. It is a bunch that just gets absolutely blasted down low for Canisius. They're outside the top 300 in terms of opponent's 2-point shooting percentage, but they actually encourage teams to shoot threes. They're a top 50 team in terms of percentage of opponent shots that come from 3-point range, and for Canisius, they're just not going to be able to cash in down low. They're outside the top 330 in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage, but even with that, with this Canisius team being a little bit sloppy with the ball, with Sacred not necessarily putting you under duress on defense, I do think that they get just enough clean possessions to be able to hold in there, and getting back Marcus Tyblack, who's out with injury, I think is big as well. So semi-line at 8, I'm going to be willing to take 9+ here with Canisius, and I set my total at a 142, so I'm also going to be in on this total under as well. 797, 798 on the card, it is Hofstra. They are going to be on the road against North Carolina A&T, and A&T is a home underdog of 9 to 9.5 points. 149 to 150.5 is the total. Set a total here of a 153. I like the over. Now, you've got a Hofstra team that is not necessarily playing at a rapid pace in terms of total possessions, bringing 293rd in all of college basketball. And A&T, they're a more mid-tempo team, about 145th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. Their big kryptonite has been turnovers. This A&T team is outside the top 290 in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis. They do a nice job on the glass, though. They've been a top 125 team with regards to their overall rebound percentage. You've got a Hofstra bunch that is going to fight for a lot of second and third chances. They've been very strong on the inside. Top 30 team in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage. They rebound about 33.3% of their missed shots as an offensive rebound. That is a top 65 mark in all of college basketball. I do think that A&T has just enough to be able to hold in there. I set my line at 9, so 9.5 does become my buy point there, but you've got Cruz Davis cruising his way to 22 points, 5 assists per contest for the Hofstra bunch, shooting about 45.5% from 3. Hofstra as a whole, they shoot 37.5% from 3-point range if you involve their games against non-D1 teams. If you look at D1 opponents and D1 opponents only, they're about 23rd in the country, shooting 38% from 3, and that goes to 38.8% in a roadside shoot score venue. Meanwhile, for North Carolina A&T, not a team that's going to be necessarily going to flamethrower mode from 3-point range. They only shoot 27.9% from 3-point range at home, and they've been dealing with a few injuries, as right now you've got the Walkers, who have been your top scorers for this team, as Luron Walker's right now dealing with a little bit of an injury, while his main man, Lewis Walker, has been the top scorer. Lewis Walker, 17.5 points, shoots only about 31% for 3, but 5 boards per contest. Luron has been missing for about the last 12 or so games. He was averaging 16.5 points per contest, so they've needed in the interim to have Dwayne Pierce be able to step up, give the team 8.5 points. Doesn't necessarily pop it well from 3, but throws in there 2.5 assists per game, and then you've been able to get quite a bit of production out of Trent Middleton. He comes over from Delaware, 11.5 points per contest, shoots 36.5% from 3-point range, and it's been an A&T team that's been pretty good on the interior. They're a top 175 team in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage, and one thing that they do really well, A&T gets to the free throw line. Top 25 team in terms of free throw attempts on a per possession basis. Not going to put you under duress at all. They're outside the top 300 in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis, but I do think that the way that they hit the glass, the way that this team has been pretty okay with regards to their interior offense, just enough to hold in there in this game. Semi-line to 9. I'm going to take 9.5+ here with North Carolina A&T. For Hofstra, you do have quite a few guys down low that should be able to help you out with this total. You've got Preston Edman, who's been able to give you 15 points, 4.5 assists per contest. James Boogie Patterson, along with German Plitnikov, have been able to give you 9 points per contest apiece, but now with James Patterson being out of the fold, that does cause a little bit of strife for this Hofstra team, as he's been able to give you about 5 rebounds per game, so that means you're going to see more Silas Sunday, who's a true 7-footer, is able to give you 6 rebounds per game. I think that Boogie Patterson injury could be the difference between a cover and a non-cover, so we'll take 9.5+ here with A&T, and I like the over. So my total 153, 799, 800 on the card. It is Siena. They play with some Marist, and Marist finds themselves as a very slim road underdog here of 1.5 points. 133 to 133.5 is the total. Think that you get a slog. I set my total at a 128.5. I'm going to be in on the under. You've got a Siena team that has been very good in terms of slowing things down. 357th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. You got a Marist team that they're playing a little bit faster than they have in the past, but not much faster. 268th in the country in terms of total possessions per game, and both of these teams have reigned supreme with their defense. How about Marist? Mambo number 5 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, and then you got a Siena group that they're not quite that, but they're still 65th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. We'll say this, for the Siena team, they're actually giving up about 4.5 points more per 100 possessions at home rather than in a roadside shoot score venue, but I did set them as a 2.5 point favorite because I believe that this Marist 3-point shooting defense is doing for a little bit of negativity, and Siena's doing for some positivity with their own 3-point shooting. Siena's right now 308th in the country with their 3-point shooting percentage, but we've seen them shoot 40+% from 3 over the last 3 games. I feel like they were just having some bad shooting variance to begin the season, and it's a Marist team that's been a top 15 team in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis, and then with opponents' 3-point shooting percentage, they are 3rd in the country, 23.1% at home. That does go to closer to about 31.7% in a roadside shoot score venue, so I do think that this is going to start to iron out just a little bit, and for Siena, I love what you've been able to get out of your main scorer, Gavin Doty. He's been supplying the team with about 16.5 points per contest, shoots 35% from three-point range. It is a Siena team that in a pressure spot, they shoot about 73% of the free throw line. That is country average, and they've done a really good job in terms of controlling the tenor of the boards. Even though Marist, year in and year out, is always a really good team in terms of opponents' two-point shooting percentage, they're not necessarily a team that's going to give themselves a lot of second and third chances. 202nd in the country in terms of percentage of their missed shots that result in an offensive rebound. You got a Siena team that is currently 87th of the country. They rebound about 32.5% of their misses as an offensive rebound. And then you've got Justice Schultz, who's able to give you 13 points, about 5 assists per contest, only shoots in the mid-30s from 3. And then on the flip side, Justin Bernard, he's able to match up quite well with that. As for Marist, he's been able to give out a little bit over 4 assists per contest, throws in their double figures from three-point, shooting in that pocket about 36%. And then Elijah Lewis, Rajon Blackwell, they're your top two scorers with about 24.7 points per contest between the two of them. Neither shoot it well from 3. And for Marist, you actually only have one guy on the roster that gives you over 4.3 rebounds per game. That'd be Jaden Daughtry with about 5.9 boards. Throws in there C.O.9 per contest, but think that you get a grimy, slow game that is going to just really push you into the depths. I do think that in the end, Siena on their home floor does just enough to be able to get the job done. Set them as a 2.5 point favorite. One to lay up to a deuce here with Siena, and I'm going to be in on the under. Set my total 128.5. 801, 802 on the card. It's Arkansas State on the road against Georgia Southern. Georgia Southern is a underdog here of 2 to 2.5 points. 173 to 173.5 is the total. I said Arkansas State as a 2.5 point favorite. I'm going to be 1 to lay up to 2 with them. In a pressure-packed spot, Arkansas State is able to knock down their free throws. In terms of free throw shooting percentage, this team, if you involve non-D1 games, 76.2%. That's a top 50 mark in all of college basketball. And for this bunch, the big key is being able to find some three-point shooting, as they've been able to find that finally with Joey Chimana, who was missing for 11 games, shooting about 45.5% per 3 with 11 points per contest. Overall for the season, Arkansas State has been outside the top 250 with their three-point shooting percentage, but he should be a tide turner for this team. And I mean, for Arkansas State, just the depth of this team is great. Each of your top 7 scorers shoot at least 75% at the free throw line, and it's a bunch that has been able to do a really good job on the glass. In terms of percentage of their missed shots, that result in an offensive rebound. Arkansas State, 16th in the country. They rebound 36.6% of their misses. That actually goes up to 37.1% in a road or neutral court environment. That is a top 10 mark in all of college basketball. And you do have a Georgia Southern team that should be able to force them into turnovers. This is an Arkansas State team that's outside the top 10 in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis on offense. And for Georgia Southern, it's a much more respectable defense than it has been in the past. I know that 207th in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis doesn't sound great, but it's improvement. And Arkansas State is about 239th in the country with this regard. And for this Georgia Southern team, they're about 80th in the country in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis. And for Georgia Southern, I will say it's a pretty well-rounded team. I like the guard play that they've got, as they've got Tyron Moore, who was their top scorer 2 years ago, went to UAB last year. He's been back. He's been their main three-point shooter at about 37.5% from the outside, 14.5 points, pair of assists, steal and half per contest, and then Tavarius Spard-Webb has been able to give you 16 points. He only shoots about 30% from three-point range. And one thing for this Georgia Southern team is that they don't necessarily have that demonstrative rebounder. Alden Applewhite, only guy on the roster that gives you over 4.5 rebounds per game with about 6 boards, 12.5 points per game, and that's a big reason why there's been a lot of second and third chances to be had for opponents for Georgia Southern outside the top 275 in terms of opponents' defensive rebound percentage. And this is a team that's going to be willing to put you on the free throw line. They themselves get to the free throw line. Georgia Southern, top 50 team in terms of free throw attempts on a per possession basis on offense, top 50 team in terms of giving them away on defense. So I do think that you're going to get a nice up and down game. I did set my total here at a 168.5. I do think that this total getting just up a little bit too high, especially with Arkansas State and their propensity to turn the ball over, but I do think that Arkansas State seals this game at the free throw line. We'll lay up to a deuce with them, and I'm going to be in on the under. 803, 804 on the card. Towson is going to be on the road against Elon, and Elon does find themselves as a 2.5 point favorite. 145.5 to 146.5 is the total. I said Elon as a 4.5 point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay the number. Just dueling styles here, to say the least. Towson is one of the slowest teams you're going to find in the country, 348th in terms of total possessions per game. Elon, they're not like warp speed fast, but they're 133rd in terms of total possessions per game, and you've got a Towson team that they're really going to look to play good, hard defense. They're going to be a team that leaves something to be desired with their three-point shooting, as Elon, they're 44th in the country with their three-point shooting percentage at 36.7%. Towson, right now, they're 363rd at 26.3%, and I do think that the offense is actually going to win out here. You have an Elon team that is going to take it down low, as this is a Towson bunch that has been a top 50 team in terms of their offensive rebound percentage. You've got a lot of guys guys mixing and matching there, as you really don't have anyone that gives you over 6 rebounds per game, but trio of guys in Jack Dombia, Caleb Abiba, along with Tyler Teata, all between 5.4 and 6 rebounds per game. Dombia is able to give you about 10 points, a little bit over a steal per contest. Tyler Teata, main scorer, 16 points per contest, shoots only about 24.9% from 3, but does shoot 88% at the free throw line, but it's a Towson team that in a late game spot, they only shoot about 69.5% at the free throw line, and even though their 3-point shooting is bad, their 2-point shooting percentage is not much better. They're outside the top 250 in terms of their own 2-point shooting percentage, and they also can be added on the inside. This Towson team has been really good in terms of guarding the 3-point arc, but they are outside the top 255 in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage, and while this is an Elon team that goes bombs away from 3, they're also a top 75 team with their 2-point shooting percentage, with having a pair of guys in Kepper Klonzich along with Randall Pettis be able to combine for about 25.5 points per contest. Both shoot over 40% for 3. Bryson Cockley has shot 41% for 3, 12 points per contest. Judge Juan Carr, he shoots 39% for 3, 8 points per game, but these guys can all really drive it inside as well. And then Chandler Cothrell, one of the better mid-major scorers that you're going to find. He only shoots about 32% for 3, but 6 boards, a steal, 21 points per game, and for Elon, they've been good at taking care of the ball. They're a top 75 team. There's a few turnovers on a per possession basis. Now, they do leave themselves very vulnerable on defense. They're outside the top 275 in terms of both opponents' 2-point and 3-point shooting percentage. But again, Towson not really going to be able to take advantage there. And this has been an Elon team that, much like Towson, they've been pretty good in terms of generating second and third chances. If you look at them in terms of percentage of their missed shots, they result in an offensive rebound. This team is 37th of the country. They pull in there about 34.3% of their misses as an offensive rebound. Towson, 25th at 35.8%. I do think that Elon finds a way to get the job done, and Towson flat out just doesn't hit enough shots to be able to win this game, and I do think that Elon gets things cranked up. I think that you get some late game falling, so by total 146.5. I do like the over, and for Elon, I'm going to be willing to lay up to 4 with them. 805, 806 on the card. It's Niagara. They're going to be on the road against Fairfield. The Stags of Fairfield are a 9.5 to a 10-point favorite. So on this game, it is 139 to 139.5. So by total 139.5. I do like the over, even though it's a Fairfield team that really isn't like a flamethrower team in terms of hitting their shots. They're well outside the top 225 in terms of their 2-point shooting percentage. They've actually been more of a country average team with their 3-point shooting percentage. They're doing the little things well. This team is 69th, very nice in the country in terms of offensive rebound percentage, a rebound 33%. Other misses as an offensive rebound. Niagara outside the top 330 in terms of their overall rebound percentage, so they're going to have a nice advantage there. And for Fairfield, they take care of the ball, 34th in the country in terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis. It's a Niagara team that they're just all sorts of sloppy. They're outside the top 220 with regards to their turnover percentage, and this is a team that's supposed to be, because they have absolutely nothing down low. They don't have a single guy that gives you over 40 rebounds per game. Built around 3-point shooting, and away from home, they shoot 28.9% for 3-point range. They're outside the top 300 in terms of both points scored and points allowed on a per possession basis. Niagara 362nd in the country in terms of total possessions per game. For Fairfield, they're more of a mid-tempo team. They're about 251st in the country in terms of total possessions per game. They've been slowing down a little bit recently, but I think that they take it to a Niagara team that's well outside the top 300 in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage. And for Fairfield, they're going to be able to get those second and third chances with having Brandon Benjamin and Declan Wolfinger, who combined for 26.17.5 rebounds per game, dominating down low. Braden Sparks, 17.5 points. He shoots 41% from 3-point range. Deuce Turner down for what? He's been able to give you 9 points. He throws in there just under a steal per contest as well. And for Niagara, you only really have one double-figure score. Justin Page, who's like the only guy that returned from his season ago, he's been able to supply the team with about 12.5 points per game. He shoots 30% per 3. And you have seen a pair of guys emerge with regards to their 3-point shooting. Trenton Walters has been able to shoot about 43% from 3, 9 points per contest. Reggie Perdome has been able to give you 7 points. He shoots 37% from the outside, but I mean, this is a team that they're going to gash down low. They're outside the top 275 in terms of their own 2-point shooting percentage and opponent's 2-point shooting percentage. They're halfway decent at the free throw line, but Niagara outside the top 300 in terms of free throws attempted on a per possession basis. They don't generate turnovers. They get blasted on the glass. Not good, to say the least, for Niagara, and I do think that Fairfield gets the job done in rather convincing fashion. I set my line at a 13.5, so I'm willing to lay with Fairfield, and I'm in on the over at a 139, as I did set my total at a 139.5. 807, 808 on the card. Louisiana Monroe is going to be on the road against Marshall, and Marshall is an 18.5 point favorite. Your total on this game, it is 160.5 to a 161, and I did set Marshall as a 14.5 point favorite. I'm going to be willing to take the points with Louisiana Monroe. It's been a grody defensive team in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. This team is right now a nice hearty 337th. Marshall, they're not necessarily monsters of the midway themselves. They're about 191st in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. And if you look at their home games and their home games only, they do fall outside the top 240 with that regard. And that's a big reason why I'm in on the over. I did set my total at a 164.5. Marshall, a good 3-point shooting team, especially at home. At home, they're shooting 39.9%. 40% from three-point range. That's a top 40 mark in all of college basketball. But the one thing Monroe has going for them, 77th in the country in terms of their three-point shooting percentage. They shoot 35.8% from three-point range, and you've got two main guys who have really been able to get it going all season long. You've been able to get great production out of Martavius Russell, comes over from Mississippi State. He's been giving the team 15.5 points, shoots 37% from three, but Christian Lewis is all of a sudden up to about 16.5 points, 4.5 boards, 3 assists. He did have a little bit of a muted game against Georgia State, but past that, he's been able to score 15 plus points, and I believe now 9 out of the team's last 11 games, so he's been a nice constant for the team. Also shoots over 80% at the free throw line. Now, for Monroe, they're going to give up a lot of good looks inside. They're outside the top 3 in terms of their own two-point shooting percentage. They're outside the top 3 in terms of opponent's two-point shooting percentage, and they do not give themselves second chances. This team is outside the top 320 in terms of offensive rebound percentage. You've got a Marshall team that's going to be able to control that with Matthew Von Kamen, who comes over from Elon. He's at 7'3", 7'4", giving you about 8 points, 7.5 boards, 2.5 blocks per contest, so nice advantage there. Jalen Spear, 15 points, 5.5 assists. He shoots in the mid-30s from 3 points. One thing that's been haunting Marshall this year has been the turnovers. They're outside the top 200 in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis. They're outside the top 200 in terms of their own ball security, but that said, I do think that you get very much an up and down game with a pair of teams that they've really been cranking up their tempo, especially Monroe. They're up to about 74th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. Marshall hovering in that neighborhood about 109th. I do think that Monroe with that three-point shooting does just enough to be able to in there, especially with this being a Marshall team that they are allowing teams to shoot about 33% from three. That's right around country average, and they've been stronger with their interior defense. So I did set my total here at 164.5, like the over, and I'm willing to take the points here with Monroe. 809, 810 on the card. It's Western Illinois, and they're going to be on the road against Morris State. Morris State is a favorite here of 8.5 to 9.5 points. So last game, 139.5 to 140.5. So my line at 8. I'm going to be willing to take the points with Western Illinois. It's a dangerous game because this Western Illinois team really isn't too good with anything whatsoever, but they do slow things out. 284th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. Morris State, for some reason, is bumping up their tempo. They're now 182nd in the country in terms of total possessions per game, but Morris State just doesn't execute on offense. They're 270th in the country in terms of their three-point shooting percentage. They especially are not taking care of the ball. This team 298th in the country in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis, and this is a team that's always prided themselves on being good on the glass, and to their credit, they do a great job in terms of giving themselves second and third chances. 35th in the country in terms of offensive rebound percentage. In their home games, they do rebound about 43.8% of their misses as an offensive rebound. That's actually the 4th best rate at home in all of college basketball, but they also give it up on the defensive glass. They allow opponents to grab 34.1% of their missed shots as an offensive rebound. That's 337th in all of college basketball. In Western Illinois, they certainly give up a lot of second and third chances, who are 98th in the country with regards to their defensive rebound percentage, but I do think that Isaiah Griffin, who comes over from Idaho St, is going to be able to help this Western Illinois team remain relatively lively. He's been rock solid with about 12.5 points, shoots 38.5% for three for a team that they shoot 29.2% for three. That is a bottom 15 mark in all of college basketball. But for Western Illinois, they also have been a top 225 team in terms of offensive rebound percentage. Awful with their two-point shooting percentage, outside the top 330 with this regard. Awful with their free throw shooting percentage, and yet I'm still willing to take the points because Morris State doesn't take care of the ball. Lucas Lorenzen has actually been a rock-solid go-to scorer for this Western Illinois team, as he's right now contributing about 15.5 points per contest. For Morris State, it's more of a just sort of a collective trying to come together and all just be able to be a whole is greater than the sum of its parts approach sort of team, as right now you've got essentially 9 different guys. They give between 5 and 13.1 points per contest. Davion Cunningham, George Marshall, they combine for about 26 points per contest, and both shoot about 33% from three. You've got Josiah Legere, who's been able to shoot about 39% from the outside, but you only have one guy on the roster that gives you over 4.5 rebounds per game, John Carroll, who's caroling his way to about 7.5 rebounds per game, but it's a Morris State team that they can very easily get blitzed. They're outside the top 250 in terms of opponents' 2-point and 3-point shooting percentage. They're not doing a great job in terms of generating turnovers in a pressure spot. They shoot about 72% of the free throw line. That's country average. I think that Western Illinois doing just enough to be able to hold in there. And Morris State, at their core, they're a little bit more of a slow and controlled team. I think that they're going to be tapering down that tempo just a skosh. So I did set my total here at a 136. I like the under, and with Western Illinois, won't take anything above 8 with them. 8-11, 8-12 on the card. It's North Dakota. They're going to be on the road against Oral Roberts. Oral Roberts is a underdog here of 1.5 points. So it's between 146.5 to a 147, and I made Oral Roberts a 2-point favorite. I do like them on the money line. Both of these teams have been rough to say the least. North Dakota, a little bit of an up-tempo team, 140th in terms of total possessions per game. Oral Roberts, 159th. And both of these teams are giving up plenty of second and third chances on the glass. Oral Roberts, they're allowing opponents to grab 35.2% of their missed shots as an offensive rebound. That's 346th in all of college basketball. North Dakota, in a road/ridge score venue, teams are grabbing 31% of their missed shots as an offensive rebound. And this is a North Dakota team that the one thing that they've been able to do a good job of is generating turnovers. Top 35 team in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis. That said, you still have a bunch that has been really not good on offense or outside the top 250 in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. If I'm not mistaken, they've been able to really just have a little bit of success in general with Grayson Newman, give you about 13.5 points per contest. And if you look at the first time these two teams played, that was a 72-61 game. It was a sloppy game. Both teams missed a whole bunch of threes. I do think that you see a little bit of positivity here with North Dakota in conference play. They've been shooting more around about 38.5% from three, and they've been allowing opponents to shoot 47% from three-point range. Now, that should be coming down a little bit, but good grief, they have not been good with that regard. And you got an Oral Roberts team that they are not necessarily the world's greatest with their three-point shooting. You got Yamanachi Williams. He was a guy that at Portland 2 years ago was a really good three-point shooter, and he's shooting a nice already 24% from three thus far this season, but he's been able to give you about 9 points, 4.9 rebounds per game. And then you got Ty Harper. Comes in from Youngstown State, 33% three-point shooter, 15.5 points per contest. Oral Roberts is only shooting about 32% from three-point range as a collective, and that's actually gotten down to 28% here in conference play. Again, think that should be going northward, but a team that's been well outside the top three in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis. Overall for the season, about 14 turnovers per game, down to about 9.8 turnovers per game here in Summit League play. I think that a little bit of that is due to the competition that they're playing against, but this team has been relatively okay in terms of executing inside. You've been able to have Connor Doe be able to give you about 12.5 points, 3.5 rebounds per game, and with North Dakota just really not having a lot on the inside, you've been able to have some good versatility. I Eli King, 11.5 points, 5.5 rebounds per game, but he's a guard, and he's right now the lone guy on the roster. It gives you over 5 rebounds per game. I think Oral Roberts gets their revenge in what I think is going to be a game that is not going to be a thing of beauty, but I think that you get just enough possessions here for the over. Semi-total 148, so I do like the over, and I do like Oral Roberts here, right on the money line, 8-13, 8-14. It's Eastern Illinois on the road against Southern Indiana. Southern Indiana is a 2.5 to a 3.5 point favor, 134 to 134.5 is the total. Semi-total at a 133. I do like the under. Southern Indiana is playing at a pretty rapid rate of pace, 104th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. In conference play, though, they've been slowed down by about 5 possessions per game, slower than they were in non-conference play. And Eastern Illinois, very slow team, 274th in terms of total possessions per game, and both of these teams are well outside the top 270 in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. And Eastern Illinois, in a road/shoot score venue, they allow opponents to grab 39.4% of their missed shots as an offensive rebound. That is a bottom 25 mark in all of college basketball. That's really not good. And I do think that for Southern Indiana, they deserve to be the favorite here. I could only set them as a 3-point favorite. Right now, we're between 2.5 and 3.5. I personally would rather take 3.5 with Eastern Illinois rather than lay 2.5 because I have absolutely no faith in the shooting whatsoever of this Southern Indiana team. Like this Southern Indiana team, they're actually doing a good job taking care of the ball, especially here in conference play. In conference play, they're only turning the ball over about 11 times per contest for their tempo. That's not too bad, but that said, they are outside the top 290 in terms of their 2-point, 3-point, and free throw shooting percentages, and at the free throw line in a pressure spot, 63.6%. That is a bottom 10 mark in all of college basketball. Now, they do a nice job pile driving teams inside. They're a top 10 team in terms of percentage of opponent shots that come from inside the 3-point line. You've got Ishmael El-Abib, who's giving you 16.5 points per contest, Cardell Bailey, 14.5 points per contest, and they combine to shoot about 33% from 3, and they've dealt with injuries to Trey Thomas all season long. That's been earning them. Amari Brown, when he's been out there on the floor, he's been able to get the team about 14 points per contest, but he's been dealing with a lot of injuries. Should be good to go in this game, and ever since they got him back, that's been a nice breath of life for them. But Eastern Illinois is another guy that's been able to breathe life into them. That would be Andre 3000 Washington. He was missing for about 9 games. He's come in. He's been able to get the team 13 points per contest, shoots about 34% from 3, and then Zion Fruster is a do-it-all guard, 2.5 assists, steal, 15 points. He shoots about 33% from 3-point. And Eastern Illinois, still a top 175 team in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis, and they've been good in terms of guarding the 3-point line. They've been a top 125 team in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage, not grabbing any sort of offensive rebounds whatsoever, but Southern Indiana not grabbing any sort of defensive rebounds, so good old situation of something's got to give. Semi-total 133, so I do like the under, and at 3.5 plus, I'm going to be one of these points with Eastern Illinois. 8-15, 8-16 on the card. Tennessee Tech is on the road against Lindenwood. Lindenwood is an 8.5 point favorite. Total on this game 150.5, and with Lindenwood, I did set them as an 8.5 point favorite. I'm right now seeing some 9s and 9.5s emerging. That would be my buy point here on Tennessee Tech, as Tennessee Tech is a team that they play fast, but not necessarily like absolutely harebrained fast in terms of total possessions per game. They're checking in that neighborhood about 177th in the country, so a very mid-tempo team. Meanwhile, it is a Lindenwood team that has been really looking to bump up that tempo in terms of total possessions per game. They find themselves at 23rd in all of college basketball, slow down a little bit more at home, and this has been a Lindenwood team that has been rough with their three-point shooting, and that'll match up with a Tennessee Tech team that shoots 30.4% from three. Both of these teams well outside the top 275 with that regard, but for this Tennessee Tech team, they are a top 175 team with regards to their free throw shooting percentage. They've been a top 225 team with regards to their overall rebound percentage. I think that that's enough to be able to keep them lively, and in a game where neither team is shooting well from three-point range, Tennessee Tech, I'm not going to say that they're like some sort of a beastly defense or anything like that on the inside, but they have not been bad in terms of restricting teams inside the three-point line. Where they really get gash is from three-point range, but Tennessee Tech is right now 96th in the country in terms of opponents' two-point shooting percentage. Lindenwood is more around about 154th, and in their home games, they drop outside the top 225. Makai Cameron, Danny Pounds have been able to combine for about 22 points per contest, and Pounds pounds it out to shoot 41% from three-point. Judge Juwan Nichols has been able to give you about 4.5 rebounds per game. It's not a Tennessee Tech team that really has anyone on the roster that gives you over 5 rebounds per game, so Lindenwood is going to have a little bit of an edge there. As for Lindenwood, you've got a few feature guys that have really been able to do a nice job of elevating the team. I like what you've been able to get out of Aeneas Fitrell along Jadis Jones. They combine for 32 points per contest, and Jones has been really that main guy down low, about 8.2 rebounds, steal that per contest. And for this Lindenwood team, they still have been pretty solid in terms of generating turnovers. Top 125 team in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis. Robert Lewis has been shooting 69% on the inside with his 2-point shooting percentage, but team shoots about 30% from 3-point, even with Futrell shooting 36% from 3-point, and then Dontrez Williams, 15.5 points, shoots 34% from 3, but it's a very, very top-heavy team right now with Lindenwood with regards to the scoring, and with this Lindenwood team being one that is outside the top 275 in terms of defensive rebound percentage, and being one that just really doesn't do as great of a job with regards to their interior defense as their exterior is. They've been a top 75 team in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage. Do think that Tennessee Tech holds in there, and what I think is going to be a relatively up-and-down game. Sub by total 152.5. I like the over 9+. We'll take the points with Tennessee Tech. 8-17, 8-18 on the card. Little Rock is on the road against Southeast Missouri State. SEMO is a 5.5 to a 6.5 point home favorite. Total on this game 147.5, and with Southeast Missouri State set them as a 7.5 point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay the number. Little Rock is very much looking to slow games down. 272nd in the country in terms of total possessions per game. Southeast Missouri State is a little bit more content to bump up the tempo, about 128th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. And for Southeast Missouri State, they're a little bit vulnerable on the inside, 238th in the country in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage, but they don't allow second and third chances. They've been a top 150 team in terms of their defensive rebound percentage, still a top 125 team in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis, and Little Rock is giving up second and third chances like they're flowing like wine. Right now, they're 348th in the country, allowing opponents to grab 35.5% of their missed shots as an offensive rebound, and this team is sloppy. Little Rock, 348th in the country in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis. In a road or neutral court venue, 22.6% of their possessions turn into a turnover. That's a bottom 10 mark in all of college basketball. The one thing that Little Rock has been pretty solid at is being able to pop it and lock it from 3-point range. This team is a top 100 team with their 3-point shooting percentage at about 36.1%. Travel's okay. They shoot about 34% from 3 away from home, and they have the best scorer in this game. That'd be Jonathan Lawson, 17 points per contest, shoots 37.5% from 3, 80+% at the free throw line. But even with them shooting well at the free throw line, this Little Rock team in a tight spot, they shoot 66.8% at the free throw line. That is outside the top 325 in all of college basketball. This team is also outside the top 250 in terms of their own 2-point shooting percentage and opponents' 2-point shooting percentage. Now, this is also a Little Rock team that's become a top 100 team in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis. The ancillary pieces have been solid. Braxton Bayless, 9.5 points, 3.5 rebounds per game. Tukan Gakic down low, about 5.5 boards, a little bit over a block per contest. Cameron Walls, 13.7 rebounds per game, so you've been able to get some relatively good production there. But on the flip side, for the Southeast Missouri State team, I do think that they're going to do a nice job with Braxton Stecker, doing a nice job in terms of helping run that offense. He, along with Luke Almendover, have been able to combine for just under 27 points per game, and they combine to shoot about 34.5% from 3. It's a Missouri State team that they are outside the top 330 with their 3-point shooting percentage, and they themselves shoot about 67% at the free throw line. But top 45 team in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis. They really force things to the inside as well. They're a top 75 team in terms of percentage of opponent shots that come from inside the 3-point line, and even though they really don't have anyone that gives you over 5.3 rebounds per game, they do a nice job by committee. Landon Blocker, about 5.5 points, 4 boards per contest, and then Marquise Ball, Brandon Terry, they combine to be able to give you 18.9 points, 10.5 rebounds per game. I do think that Southeast Missouri State gets it done against a Little Rock team that's just all sorts of sloppy. I set my total at a 143.5. I'm going to be in on the under, and I'm willing to lay here with Southeast Missouri State. 819, 820 on the card. Weber State is on the road against Montana. Montana is a 5 to a 6 point favorite. Total is between 157 to 156, and I set Weber State as a 1.5 point underdog. I'm going to be willing to take the points for Montana. 335th in the country in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis. Big giant issue there, and for Montana right now, the forte of this team, 3-point shooting, 34th in the country. They shoot 37.2% from 3 points, but Weber State, a top 25 team in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage away from home. Teams shoot less than 25% from 3 against them. That is a top 2 mark in all of college basketball. Weber State and Montana are both looking to bump up tempo. Weber State, 51st in the country in terms of total possessions per game. Montana is 82nd, but in their home games, Montana sends the top 50 with that regard. And for Montana, you've got money on your side. Money Williams, who's able to give you 19.5 points, 4.5 boards, 5.5 assists. Only shoots about 29.5% from 3, but I mean, overall, it has been a team that's been rock solid there. And in a tight spot, both of these teams are pretty good at the free throw line. Montana is shooting about 77.5% of the free throw line. That's a top 25 mark. Weber State, they're down to about 71% at the free throw line, but they've been a top 75 team in terms of getting to the free throw line. Weber State, they themselves shoot about 35.5% from 3. That's a top 125 mark in all of college basketball. It does take a little bit of a nosedive away from home. That goes down to about 31.6% from 3, but they're dealing with an injury to Vajami Valtinen, who's been giving you 12.5 points per contest. Missed 6 games. He's back. He's their top 3-point shooter. That is 41.5% from 3 points with him. Each of your top 3 scorers do shoot at least 77.8% at the free throw line for Weber State, with Tijan Sani, who's been able to give you 14 points, 4 assists, being that main scorer for the team. And then you got a lot of guys that just mix and match on the boards, with Malik Goma being able to give you 7.5 rebounds per game. Edwin Suarez, Nigel Burris, they combine for about 12 rebounds per game. So these guys have been able to do a pretty rock solid job. And for Montana, you just don't have that down low. They're not giving themselves any sort of second and third chances. This team is a bottom 5 team in all of college basketball in terms of offensive rebound percentage. You've got one guy, Tayshaun Sawyer, that gives you over 4.5 rebounds per game, 11 points, 5.5 boards per contest, and he does shoot 72% on his 2-point shot, so that's relatively solid. And then you got a lot of mixing and matching, pretty much 4 different guys that give between 8 and 9.4 points per contest. That includes Tyler Thompson, who's been able to give you about 4.5 boards, 9.5 points per contest, and he does shoot over 42% per 3, but I do think that Weber State's exterior defense going to be a hold up here, and I do think that Montana just going to be very sloppy with the ball with those turnovers. So by total 155.5. I like the under, and I'm willing to take the points here with Weber State. 821, 822. It's Missouri State. They're going to be on the road against New Mexico State. New Mexico State is a 5.5 to a 6.5 point favorite. 142.5 to 145 is the total. By total 140.5. I'm going to be willing to take a shot on the under. Last time these two teams played, Missouri State went into flamethrower mode from 3-point, and I just don't think that lightning is going to be striking twice. As for this Missouri State team, overall for the season, 307th in the country in terms of their 3-point shooting percentage. Strangely, they shoot 29.4% at home, 32.7% in a roadside-shoot-to-court venue. And for New Mexico State, this is not a team that's necessarily going to light you up from 3 either. They have been shooting about 35% from 3-point range when they've been at home. That's a little bit above country average, but that's not necessarily the name of their game. Meanwhile, for Missouri State, you've had Keith Pollock do a nice job in terms of ascending for the team. 18.7 boards, 4 assists per contest for a team that all of a sudden has become a top 200 team in terms of few turnovers on a per possession basis. They really dealt with some issues with that last season, and this is a Missouri State team that they're going to allow you to be able to have some second and third chances, but they're going to grab their own second and third chances. For this Missouri State team, they're a top 200 team in terms of percentage of their missed shots that result in an offensive rebound. You've been able to have Michael Osi-Benosu give you 7+ rebounds per game, but they are also a team that, in terms of defensive rebound percentage, they're right now checking in 301st in all of college basketball. In games played away from home, 33.5% of opponents' missed shots do become an offensive rebound, and it's a New Mexico State team that they've been 64th in terms of defensive rebound percentage, so they've been able to do a pretty rock solid job there. And you do have Colby Williams for this Missouri State team, shooting 36% from 3 with about 14 points per contest. But with this New Mexico State team, I did set them here as a favorite of 6.5 points. I'd be willing to lay up to 6 with them because I do think that they are going to be able to get quite a bit of production. The former Meat Road Runner in Jameel Jones has come in. He's been able to give the team 16 points, 4 boards, only guy in the roster that gives you over 10.5 points per contest, shoots 34.5% from 3. Julius Mims shoots 41% from 3 with about 10.5 points per contest. This team last year was really good with regards to their overall defense. They were a top 75 team in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. We've seen that erode a little bit, but this is still a New Mexico State team that's a top 150 team in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. Not a team that's really going to be looking to push tempo. 286th in terms of total possessions per game. Missouri State, they do find themselves more in that neighborhood about 247. So I feel like what happened the first time around was a little bit more of a one-off. Semi-total at 140.5. I'm going to be in on the under, and I'm willing to lay up to 6 here with New Mexico State. 823, 824. It's Tennessee State. They're going to be on the road against SIU Edwardsville. Edwardsville does does find themselves as a 1.5 point favorite. 144.5 is the total, and I did set Edwardsville as a 2 point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay the 1.5. It's a Tennessee State team that I just fear that their sloppiness is really going to get to them in this spot, as it's a Tennessee State team that has been doing a relatively respectable job on defense in games played away from home. They're a top 100 team in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, but that said, for the Tennessee State team, they just don't do a great job in terms of making the most out of their possessions, as in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis, they're outside the top 170 with that regard in games played away from home, outside the top 200. Now, I will say this, you do have a Tennessee State team that has been very good in terms of generating turnovers, top 100 team with that regard as well, and they're going to give themselves a lot of second and third chances. This Tennessee State team, right now, they are rebounding about 31.5% of their missed shots as an offensive rebound away from home. That is well inside the top 80 in all of college basketball, but for this SIU Edwardsville team, they have been able to do a really good job in terms of their defense as well. They're a top 80 team in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. They don't necessarily have the world's greatest, shall we say, offense in the world. They've been outside the top 225, but you have been able to have Ring Belaith really step up and be the leader of this team. 17 points, 5.5 boards. He from three-point and shoots about 33% from three. And Edwardsville as a whole actually shoots 34% from three, just a hair below country average. They've been rough with their interior offense. They're outside the top 255 with that regard, but they're a top 75 team in terms of both opponents' 2-point and 3-point shooting percentage. They are going to give up a few looks at the free throw line, and in a pressure spot, this team only does shoot 67% at the free throw line. That's a little bit of an issue, but they also do a pretty solid job in terms of generating turnovers themselves. They're a top 125 team in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis, but if you look at their home games and their home games only, they are into the top 45 in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis. Going to have dueling tempos here, but I do think that even though this game might be slowed down just a little bit more than a lot of people anticipate, those late fouls do just enough for the over. I set Edwardsville as a 2 point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay the number, and I'm in on the over. Set my total at a 146, 825, 826 on the card. It is Idaho, and they're going to be playing us to Sacramento St. Sacramento St is a underdog of 9.5 to 10 points. Total on this game is 159.5 to a 161.5. I said Idaho is an 11 point favorite, so I'm going to be willing to lay the number. It's an Idaho team that's not going to put you under duress in terms of a lot of turnovers or anything like that, and Sacramento State not going to either. Idaho, they're about 230th in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis. Sacramento State is 205th, but this is the Sacramento State team that just has not been able to get anything going on the inside whatsoever. In terms of their 2 point shooting percentage, Sacramento State, 365 Division I teams, is right now checking in 348th in all of college basketball. And they were without Mikey Williams in their last game as well, and that's a point guard who's been able to give you over 15 points per contest. Not a guy that really shoots so well from three-point range, but is giving out right around about 5 assists per game. So, I mean, that is a big, giant loss, especially when you consider the fact that their main big man down low in Jeremiah Cherry has been out for much of the season as well. He was really getting things going for this team, and him being now out, that's a big issue, because now you've got Prophet Johnson, give you about 16.5 points, 8 boards, 3.5 assists, 2.8 steals per contest, shoots 36% from three, but not a whole heck of a lot of anything around him. You've got Mark Levinoff, who's been able to give you about 8.7 rebounds per game. Jelani Summers has actually shot about 48% for three, so credit to him. He's been able to supply the team with about 9 points per contest, but even with that, Sacramento State still outside the top 230 in terms of their own 3-point shooting percentage. They do a solid job at the free throw line. They have been a top 100 team in terms of free throw attempts on a per possession basis, but again, getting gashed down low, they're right around about 300th in terms of their 2-point shooting percentage. You do have an Idaho team that has been able to do a nice job in terms of just executing in general on offense. This Idaho team is a top 85 team in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. They're a top 175 team in terms of their 2-point shooting percentage, top 100 team with their 3-point shooting percentage, and they do not allow second and third chances. Top 25 team in terms of their defensive rebound percentage, and they've done it with Colton Mitchell and Jack Rasmussen combined for about 29 points per contest. Mitchell has been able to shoot 36% from three-point range. Brody Woodbury, he doesn't give you a lot of versatility, but he's now expanded his game to shoot about 43% from three, 6 boards, 9 points per contest. It's a Idaho team that's not going to give themselves a lot of second and third chances. They're not going to block a lot of shots or anything like that, but they've been a top 175 team in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage, and I do think that with the way that Idaho does a relatively solid job in terms of taking care of the ball. They're a top 150 team in terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis. It is an Idaho team that has a pretty nice home court advantage as well. I do think that they find a way to get the job done against a very short-handed Sacramento State team, and it is an Idaho team that's a little bit more mid-tempo here, 178th in the country in terms of total possessions per game, and for Sacramento State, in terms of total possessions per game, they have been one of your faster teams in all of college basketball, checking in 32nd, but do think that Idaho slows this game down. Set my total here at a 157. I like the under, and with Idaho, I'm going to be willing to lay up to 10.5 with them. 8:27, 8:28 on the card. Eastern Washington is going to be playing us to Portland State. Portland State 1.5 to 2-point favorites. Totals between 148.5 to a 150. We're seeing the psych up to a 151 as well, and I'm still on the over. I set my total at a 155 mainly because this Eastern Washington defense is just that bad. Eastern Washington is outside the top 335 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, outside the top 330 in terms of both opponents' 2-point and 3-point shooting percentage. This is an Eastern Washington team that as well, they're not doing a great job in terms of making the most out of their possessions on offense. 269th in the country in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis. Now, Portland State, they themselves are about 285th in the country in terms of turnovers per possession. And the one thing that Eastern Washington has been able to do an okay job of has been generating a few turnovers with regards to their defense. They have been a top 175 team in terms of turnovers force on a per possession basis. Meanwhile, you've got a Portland State team that in a roadside-to-score venue, they've been a top 125 team with that regard as well. But Portland State should be able to absolutely own things down low in this game, as you've got an Eastern Washington team that's outside the top 300 with regards to rebound percentage at home, and then you got Scary Terry Miller and Jalen Henderson for this Portland State team, both giving you 18 plus points per contest. Henderson 18.4 points, 6.2 assists, 1.7 steals, doesn't shoot it well from three. Scary Terry Miller does, shoots 45% from three, 19 points per game. Now for Portland State, in a tight spot, they only do shoot about 69.5% at the free throw line, but they do a nice job executing on offense down low, a top 125 team in terms of their own 2-point shooting percentage, and they've been a top 125 team in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage as well. You've got a lot of guys that have just been able to contribute to the cause, as you've been able to get about 11 points, 9 rebounds per game by Trayvon Minnick, Keon Kenzie, about 11.5 points per contest. You've got a guy in Kelsey Phipps who shoots about 45% from three-point range. And then for Eastern Washington, it's been a case where you've had a nice top scorer in Isaiah Moses, about 4 assists, 18 points per game. He shoots 35% from three-point range, but then outside of that, you just don't have a lot of production, and this team is getting rolled down low, even though you do have Stratton Rogers, that'll give you about 6 points, 5 rebounds at a steal per contest. Kyrie Huey, who comes over from Idaho St, 12.5 points, 5 rebounds, but just doesn't give you a lot of versatility. And if you're going to be as bad as Eastern Washington is on defense, you have to be able to make up for it with a little bit of better three-point shooting. I will say, they allow opponents to shoot over 41% from three-point range away from home, less than 30% at home. I think that irons out, but I need Eastern Washington about 154th in the country with regards to their three-point shooting percentage. It's not awful, but at the same time, in my opinion, it needs to be better. And for Eastern Washington, they're really just not being able to generate good, clean offense down low as well. At home, they're outside the top 235 with regards to their own two-point shooting percentage, even though you have had Alton Hamilton be able to give you about 11.5 points per contest. I think that Eastern Washington just gets lambasted on defense. It's an Eastern Washington team that's fast but not warp speed, 103rd in terms of total possessions per game. Portland State, they're more around at 78th. I do think that Portland State really takes it to a bad Eastern Washington defense and gets it done in a higher scoring game. Set by total of 155, so I'm in on the over, and I'm willing to lay with Portland State. Made them a 5-point favorite. 8:29 and 8:30 on the card. St. Thomas is going to be playing against South Dakota State. South Dakota State is a underdog here of 7 to 7.5 points. 155.5 is the total, and I made a total of 151.5. I'm going to be in on the under. South Dakota State is a team that's been relatively mid-tempo this year, about 226th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. You got a St. Thomas team that's looking to push a little bit more tempo. St. Thomas right around about 149th in terms of total possessions per game. You're just not going to get a lot of second and third chances in this game. St. Thomas, to their credit, they don't allow opponents to be able to grab a lot of offensive rebounds. They are 57th in the country in terms of defensive rebound percentage. 25.5% of opponents' missed shots become an offensive rebound. They themselves are not generating a lot of second and third chances. 363rd in all of college basketball with regards to their offensive rebound percentage. And St. Thomas really good at taking care of the ball. This is a top 20 team in terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis. And as a result, they have been a plenty efficient offense right now for St. Thomas in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. They are number 70 in all of college basketball. They do experience an uptick of about 19.1 points more per 100 possessions at home rather than away from home. And for South Dakota State, I'm not even kidding when I say it, they are scoring about 27.9 points fewer per 100 possessions away from home rather than at home. They've been a top 30 team in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, but I'm going to be willing to take a shot on them with the points, as this is a South Dakota State team that is a top 225 team in terms of opponents' 2-point and 3-point shooting percentage. And St. Thomas, relatively pedestrian 3-point shooting team, even with Nolan Minsale, who's been able to give you over 20 points per contest. You've been able to have a lot of mixing and matching with those guys, but with the South Dakota State team, you have to love the fact that you've got a quartet of different guys that give you between 10.9 and 13.4 points per contest. Jaden Jackson, good versatility, 13.5 points, 4.5 boards, 2.5 assists, shoots 34% for 3. Joe Saylor shoots 41% for 3, with his 13 points per game. Damian Wilkerson, about 12.5 points, 6.5 rebounds per game. Kellen Gary, about 11 points, 3 assists, 5 rebounds per contest. And then on the flip side for St. Thomas, you've been able to get quite a bit of production out of Carter Bajerke. Hopefully I said that correct. He has been able to get the team about 9 points, shoots 40% from 3. And then you've got Nick Jankowski along with Isaiah Johnson Agriu, who've been able to combine for about 28 points per contest. And these are your main 3-point shooters. They combine to shoot 35.5% from 3-point range. They combine for about 9.5 rebounds per game. But with the St. Thomas team, they are going to allow a few looks on the inside. They've been outside the top 160 with regards to opponents' 2-point shooting percentage. And they themselves have actually been a really good 2-point shooting team. St. Thomas in the top 20 with that regard. But I do think that for St. Thomas, they are going to have a little bit of a tough time in terms of not being able to get those second and third chances. And I think that allows South Dakota State to be able to remain lively in a relatively mid-tempo game. So by total 151.5, I like the under animal. Take 6+ here with the Jackrabbits. 831, 832. Cal Poly is on the road against UC Santa Barbara. The Gauchos find themselves as a favorite here of 9 to 9.5 points. So on this game, it is between 159.5 to 160.5. Made a total of 161.5. I like the over. You've got a tempo war here. Cal Poly, they are third in the country in terms of total possessions per game. And for Santa Barbara, they are currently checking in 271st in the country. And for Santa Barbara, offense has been fine. They're 79th in the country in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. This was once a very, very proud defense, and they are not so proud anymore, especially with regards to the way that they are giving it up from 3-point range. Right now, they are, in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage, 310th in the country, at home allowing opponents to shoot 37.8% from 3-point range. And guess what Cal Poly does? They take a lot of threes, and they shoot 37.4% from 3-point range in a roadside shoot court venue. Now it is a Cal Poly team that's been outside the top 300 in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis. That has really been their undoing, but this is not a Santa Barbara team that's going to put you under overly much stress with that regard. They've been a top 125 team in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis, but for this Santa Barbara team, they just have taken that big giant fall off. With regards to their defenses, are also outside the top 250 in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage. Now, Mario Little is back after he was missing for about 6 games, 12.5 points, 4.5 boards, 4 assists. Love what he brings to the table. And then Ada Mahaney, he shoots 39% from 3, 14 points per game. CJ Shaw, Colin Smith, they both shoot about 40% from 3-point range. But it's a Cal Poly team that, even though they're going to have a disadvantage on the glass, this is a Santa Barbara team that's a top 50 team in terms of defensive rebound percentage. I don't think that they're going to do the world's worst job here. Cal Poly is not necessarily a team that pulls in there a ton of second and third chances themselves, but in terms of not allowing their opponents to be able to grab second and third chances, they've been a top 100 team in all of college basketball away from home. They've been a top 75 team with regards to their defensive rebound percentage. And for this Cal Poly team, even though the turnovers have been a little bit less than savory, you've got Ahmad Musa, who gives you 21.5 points. He shoots 38.5% for 3, 85% at the free throw line. And in a tight spot, this is a bunch that they shoot about 75.5% at the free throw line. You've been able to have Peter Benjai be able to give you about 15.5 points per contest. He shoots 41% from 3-point range. And for Cal Poly, in terms of percentage of their shots that come from 3-point range, top 15 mark in all of college basketball, with Santa Barbara doing such a bad job of guarding the 3-point line. I think that keeps Cal Poly lively in this game. Set my line at 5.5. I'm willing to take the points with Cal Poly in on the over. I set my total at a 161.5. 833, 834 on the card. You've got UC San Diego going to be on the road against UC Davis. UC Davis is a 2.5 to a 3-point underdog. Total this game 151.5 to 153.5. Set San Diego as a 3-point favorite between 2.5 and 3. Personally, I would rather lay a 2.5 rather than take a 3.5 because I just don't know what I'm going to be able to get in terms of the ball security of UC Davis. They're a really good team in terms of generating turnovers, and they've cranked up their tempo a little bit more this season. 107th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. UC San Diego, relatively mid-tempo team. They're about 213th in the country with that regard, and for San Diego, not a great but not a terrible defensive rebound team, top 155 team there, but for this UC Davis team at home, they allow opponents to grab 33.9% of their missed shots as an offensive rebound. They're outside the top 300 with that regard, and name of the game for this San Diego team is being able to pop it and lock it from 3-point range. And this UC Davis team, they are 281st in the country in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage, so I am willing to take those points. It is a UC San Diego team that has fallen off a little bit with their 3-point shooting. They're down to shooting about 35% for 3, just a hair above the top 125 in all of college basketball, but Leo Beth has been supplying the team with 15.5 points, 4.5 boards. He shoots 36.5% from 3. Alex Shulkin has become a 43% 3-point shooter, and it is a San Diego team that they're really not going to press the issue on defense. They're outside the top 225 in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis, but they've also been really good in terms of taking care of the ball as well, and that's really the main strength of this UC Davis team. UC Davis right now 88th in the country in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis, but you've got a UC San Diego team that away from home, they're a top 50 team in terms of ball security, fewest turnovers on a per possession basis. Meanwhile, for the UC Davis bunch, you've had a pair of guys in Niles Cooper along Connor Sevilla really be able to step up. Combined 28 points per contest in Sevilla. Shoots 44.5% from three-point range. Carl Daughtry, he's been able to shoot about 44.5% from three-point range. He's been dealing with quite a bit of injury throughout the season, but he's come back. He's been able to give the team 8+ points each of the last 4 games, so that's been able to give this team some nice offensive punch. And then Nico Rokac, he's been supplying you with about 5.5 rebounds, 10.5 points per contest, so you've got a more well-rounded team than we've seen in past years for this UC Davis team, and they have become a top 150 team with regards to their own two-point shooting percentage, but the way that this team just does not give themselves any sort of second and third chances. I do think that UC San Diego going to be able to remain lively in a game that I think is not necessarily going to be the highest in terms of possessions, but I think it's going to be high with regards to efficiency. So by total 153, I like the over with UC San Diego. 1 up to 2.5 with them, made them a 3-point favorite. 835, 836. Idaho St is on the road against Montana State. Montana State is a 5.5 to a 6.5 point favorite total on this game. 143.5 to 144.5, and with Montana State, I did set them as a favorite of just 4 points. I'm going to be one take the points with Idaho State. This has been one of the more efficient offenses in the country and one of the slower offenses in the country. 294th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. You got a Montana State team that's about 260th in terms of total possessions per game, and it is a Montana State team that at home they're a top 225 team in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis, but that's not necessarily the strength of this team. Meanwhile, for Idaho State, they're not necessarily the offensive rebound rate team that they have been in past seasons, but they're up to a top 100 mark in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, albeit scoring about 13.5 points fewer per 100 possessions when they're away from home rather than at home. But you got a Montana State team that they themselves have been a little bit hit or miss with regards to their offense, and it's a Montana State team that's really not going to be going down there and getting a lot of second and third chances in terms of offensive rebound percentage. Montana State just 288th in all of college basketball, so even though Idaho State has taken a little bit of a setback on the glass, they're still going to be rock solid here, as you've got Connor Hellenbeck along Caleb Vandergreen, who both give you 13.3 points per contest. Between the two of them, they combine to shoot about 39% from three-point range. It is an Idaho State team that has been able to do a pretty solid job in terms of taking care of the ball, top 155 team in terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis, and in terms of overall rebound percentage, still top 125 team in the country. Vandergreen, lone guy in the roster that gives you over 4.6 rebounds per game with 6.8, but by committee, these guys have been solid. And then Jamison Guerra gives you about 4.7 assists, 10.5 points per contest, shoots 42% from three. You've got Martin Keel, who's been able to shoot 36% from three, so you've got a lot of guys that just know their role. And for Montana State, this has been a team that's been very good with regards to perimeter defense over the last few seasons. Right now, they do find themselves in the top 125 in terms of opponents' three-point shooting percentage, and they've really been executing on the inside. This Montana State team is a top 125 team with regards to their two-point shooting percentage, but if you take a look at what they've been able to do from the outside, they've been able to rise up quite a bit with that regard. For Montana State, right now from three-point range, they shoot about 34.3%. That goes up to 36.7% in their home games, with Jed Miller and Patrick McMahon leading things with 27.2 points per contest. With Miller, he shoots 41% from three. Davion Brown shoots 43% from three-point range. And for Montana State, if they do find themselves in a pressure spot, their top four scorers, all but one of them, shoot at least 78.4% at the free throw line, but you just don't get a ton down the line of this team, because right now Jed Miller leads the way with about 5.3 rebounds per game. And with this Idaho State team being as strong as they are on the glass, with Montana State not necessarily forcing the issue with regards to generating turnovers, I do think that Idaho State going to remain lively in this game, though. I do think that's going to be a lower possession game. I did set my total at a 144, so here at the 144.5, that becomes my buy point on the under end. Won't take the points with Idaho State. 837, 838. It's UTEP. They're going to be playing us Florida International. Florida International is a 1 to a 1.5 point favorite. So this game is 148 to 148.5. Did set my total at 148, so 148.5 is my buy point on the under. Now you're going to have a bit of a tempo clash here. UTEP, one of the slowest teams in all of college basketball. They are 339th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. Meanwhile, for Florida International, they're one of the fastest teams in the country at 41st. Both of these teams have the same strength, though. They're both looking to generate turnovers in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis. It's a Florida International team that has been much, much better this year. UTEP is only about 109th in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis, and when you're outside the top 250 in terms of rebound percentage, you're in 40th in terms of three-point shooting percentage. That becomes a big giant issue. Meanwhile, for Florida National, this team has really been able to up their three-point shooting up to about 35.2%. That is a top 100 mark in all of college basketball. Now, Florida National allowing a lot of second and third chances. They themselves are outside the top 320 in terms of their defensive rebound percentage, but for Florida National, this is a top 185 group in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. UTEP is just a hearty 320th. You've been able to have Elijah Jones supply the team with about 14 points, 4.5 rebounds per game, and Jamal West does give you about 6.5 rebounds, a little bit over a block per contest. This team has been a little bit better down low with regards to their shot blocking than they have been in past seasons, but also for UTEP, they shoot 67% at the free throw line. If this is a tight game, that is not going to be helping them out. Not to say that Florida National is number one in the country with their free throw shooting percentage, but they're a team that should be able to exploit that, and they should be able to win the battle with regards to turnovers. This is a team that is much better down low as they do find themselves in the top 100 in terms of offensive rebound percentage. Corey Stevenson, 17.5 points, 7 boards. He shoots about 43% from 3. Julian Mackey is shooting 39.5% from 3. Supplies the team with 13 points per contest, and with the fall off for UTEP in terms of being able to generate turnovers, and this being a UTEP team that they're still a team that gambles for turnovers, as they do find themselves outside the top 225 in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage, hovering right around 300 in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage. I think the Florida National does get the job done, and I do think that this is going to be a bit of a slowdown game. So semi total at a 148 here at the 148.5 and on the under end. So Florida National is a 6-point favorite, so I'm going to be willing to lay the number. 839, 840 on the card. It's North Dakota State on the road against Denver, and the Pioneers look to pioneer a cover as a 4 to 4.5 point home underdog. 156.5 to 158.5 is the total. Semi-total 161.5. I'm in on the over. Denver has played all but I believe one of their games of the over thus far this season. Not that they're playing at a ridiculous pace, 148th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. As a matter of fact, for North Dakota State, they are pretty much right there in terms of total possessions per game, as they're checking in more in that neighborhood, about 161st. And for North Dakota State, 3-point shooting is way down from a season ago, but still a relatively efficient offense. This team is overall 120th in the country in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, but if you look at them in a road/neutral venue, they've been a top 55 team with that regard, and this is a Denver team that's been able to execute really well on offense. They're 76th in the country in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. Strictly in their home games, they do find themselves in the top 50, and Denver's strength, 3-point shooting. They shoot 41% from 3-point range at home, and they're also well outside the top 320 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, and they're well outside the top 325 in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage. So you should be getting a lot of makes in this game. For North Dakota State, they become a really good turnover team. They're a top 50 team in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis, and they're really winning the battle on the glass. They become a top 125 team in terms of rebound percentage. You got a pair of guys in Trayson Anderson, Travion Carson, who combine for about 12.5 rebounds per game. You get 2.3 steals per contest out of Carson with about 13 points per contest. Makai Strickland, Damari Wheeler-Thomas have been combining for about 27 points per game, and Thomas, he shoots 36% from 3-point range. You've been able to have Anthony Stefanovic step up, give the team 8.5 points, 4 assists, 3 boards for Stefanovic, shoots 35% from 3-point range himself, but I do think that Denver is going to be able to remain lively in this game for North Dakota State. In a pressure spot, they do shoot about 72% at the free throw line, and for Denver, they do a really good job in terms of being able to knock down their overall shots. They're shooting 77.8% at the free throw line, top 25 mark in all of college basketball. Carson Johnson has been the main scorer with about 18.5 points, 89% at the free throw line, 42% from 3. Jeremiah Burke shoots 36.5% from 3. He's supplying 16 points per game. It's a Denver team that is going to be allowing quite a bit down low. They're outside the top 3 in terms of their 2-point shooting percentage defense. In terms of defensive rebound percentage, they're well outside the top 275 with that regard, not really forcing a lot of turnovers, but they're a top 80 team in terms of taking care of the ball, and I do think that in a very offense-oriented game, Denver's going to be all in there. I said my total at a 161.5. I do like the over, and I'm willing to take the points here with Denver, made them a 3.5-point dog. 841, 842, UC Irvine is going to be on the road against UC Riverside. Zot, the Anteaters of Irvine are an 8.5 to a 9.5-point road favorite total on this game, 141.5 to a 143, and I did set my line at 8.5. I'm going to be willing to take 9+ here with Riverside. I recognize that Riverside has had a lot of less than tremendous play this year. They're outside the top 275 in terms of their 3-point shooting percentage. They're outside the top 275 in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis. In terms of turnovers on a per possession basis, on offense, they are 342nd in the country, but it's an Irvine team that they themselves have been turning the ball over too much. In games played away from home, they're outside the top 250 in terms of ball security. Now, with Irvine, they are a really good defensive team away from home. In terms terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, Irvine overall is 24th in all of college basketball. But if you look at things just away from home, they actually become 7th in the country. But if you do find yourself in a pressure spot, this is an Irvine team that becomes very untrustworthy. They're outside the top 275 in terms of points per possession away from home, and they shoot 69.1% on the free throw line. That is 276th in all of college basketball. They're not trying to foul, and this is a Riverside team that they do shoot about 73.5% at the free throw line. Now, for Riverside, they should get used to not necessarily finding a lot of good looks down low. As for Irvine, they're once again a top 10 team with regards to opponents' 2-point shooting percentage. Jurion Dixon, about 16 points per contest, shoots 43.5% from 3. Kyle Evans, 3.2 blocks, 12 points, 8 rebounds. And then Darian Sarin, 12 points, 5.5 boards per contest. So these guys have all been able to step up in a big way. But for UC Riverside, you do have a few guys in the backcourt that I like. Markel Worthy has been very worthy of being able to put up about 14.5 points, 4.5 boards, 3 assists per game. And Andrew Henderson, who comes on up for the D2 ranks, shoots 37.5% from 3-point range. It is a Riverside team that is very much daring teams to push the ball inside. They're a top 50 team in terms of percentage of opponent shots that come from inside the 3-point line, and it is a Riverside team that they're not going to generate any sort of second and third chances for themselves. They're well outside the top 275 in terms of their offensive rebound percentage, but with how sloppy Irvine is with the ball, with the way that they turn it over, I do think that you get yourself a slog of a game, and that allows Riverside to be able to hold in their semi-total at a 142.5. We're between 141.5 to a 143. Personally, I would rather have a 143 under rather than a 141.5 over because of the way that Irvine just plays their game. So in on the under, and we'll take 9+ here. With Riverside, 843, 844. It's Long Beach State. They're going to be on the road against Cal State Fullerton. With Fullerton, they're a 3.5 to a 4.5 point favorite total on this game, 159.5 to a 160.5. And with Long Beach State, I did set them as an underdog of 5 points. I'm going to be one to lay the number. You've got a Long Beach State team that's starting to crank up their tempo once again a little bit more. 106th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. Fullerton is just absolutely gunning it. Number 6 in the country in terms of total possessions per game, and it's a Fullerton team that if you do find them in a tight spot, they only shoot about 68.5% the free throw line. That is 292nd, but at home that does go up to about 73% at the charity stripe. Long Beach State, they shoot away from home about 74%, and I do think that there's going to be plenty of opportunities at the free throw line here, and I do think that there's going to be a little bit of sloppiness in this game as well. You've got a Long Beach State team that has been solid in terms of generating turnovers away from home, top 100 team in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis. Meanwhile, for Fullerton, this has been more of a make it and take it sort of team with regards to the rebounding, but at home, they do a really good job in terms of generating turnovers. 22.7% of opponents' possessions end in a turnover. That is a top 50 team in all of college basketball. Now, Fullerton, they're not going to give themselves any sort of second and third chances on the offensive glass. Long Beach State, they really don't fight for those opportunities either. 317th with regards to their offensive rebound percentage, but big reason why I'm willing to back Fullerton here is, for one, they have been much better in terms of not turning the ball over than they were a season ago. For their tempo, only turned the ball over about 11.5 times per contest is actually rock solid, and they become a top 200 team with regards to 2-point shooting percentage. Josh Ward, Jefferson De La Cruz, Menegado, your top scorers with a combined 27.3 points per contest have been the headline guys. You've got Bryce Cofield, who gives you about 5 boards, 12.5 points, doesn't really pop it well from 3, but does a nice job on the inside, along with Landon Seaman, who's been able to give you about 13 points per contest. And on the flip side for Long Beach State, it's been all about what you've been able to get out of Mr. Sykes. Gavin Sykes has been able to give you about 19 points, shoots 38% from 3, and Long Beach State all of a sudden is shooting about 32.5% from 3 points, still below country average, but has really been ascending for this Long Beach State team, though. They do find themselves very vulnerable with regards to their just overall shooting percentages. This is a team that gambles a bit for turnovers outside the top 240 in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage, hovering about 300th in the country in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage, but Petar Mastrovic, who comes over from Syracuse, 15.5 points, 6.5 boards, Siena Apricata shoots 38.5% from 3, and if you look at conference play and conference play only for Long Beach State, they have been shooting closer to about 35% from 3-point range, and they've been able to do a little bit of a better job in terms of not allowing second and third chances, but I do think that in the end, this Fullerton team finds a way to get the job done. They've been much better in terms of their defense and generating turnovers, turning those turnovers into offense at home. So set a total of 165. I'm in on the over, and I'm willing to lay it with Fullerton. This is the last game on the normal Las Vegas betting board before we hit the extra games, 845, 846. Cal State Bakersfield, meet me for the Roadrunners. They are on the road against Hawaii. Hawaii is a 15-point favorite total on this game. It is 146.5 to 147.5. Seeing a lot of 15.5 out there as well, and willing to lay with Hawaii. I did set them as an 18.5 point favorite. This Hawaii team just really, really good on defense, and it's a Hawaii team that is going to be able to dominate the boards as well. If you look at just overall rebound percentage, this is a Hawaii team that does find themselves right now in the top 30 in terms of that, and they're a top 10 team in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. So I do think that they are really going to be able to dictate the tenor of this game, and for this bunch in Cal State Bakersfield. They pride themselves on being able to get the ball down low. They're a top 35 team in terms of percentage of their shots that come from 2-point range. Problem is they don't make those shots. They're outside the top 310 in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis. If you look at their overall 2-point shooting percentage, they're outside the top 330 with that regard as well. They do shoot it okay at the free throw line at about 74.5%, but they'll put you on the free throw line, and they are a team that hacks a bunch, and why they're a top 30 team in terms of free throw attempts on a per possession basis on their own floor. So I do think that you're going to have a lot of, shall we say, stop clock in this game, but it is a Hawaii team that's a little bit more of a mid-tempo team. Bakersfield all of a sudden is looking to gun it for some reason. They're finding themselves 89th in the country in terms of total possessions per game, but for Bakersfield, just a very inefficient offense. You do have Ron Jessamine, 11.5 points, 6 boards, pair of blocks per contest, and then CJ Hardy and Dalen Smith in the backcourt. They combine for about 28.5 points per contest, and Hardy shoots 35.5% from 3. Team as a whole, though, they shoot 29.7% from 3. That's outside the top 330 in all of college basketball. And for Bakersfield, they do have a lot of dead possessions in their game because they're still okay in terms of generating turnovers. I'm not going to call it amazing, but for Bakersfield, they do find themselves about 87th in the country in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis. Hawaii, they're more around about 126. They actually generate more turnovers away from home rather than they do at home, but I do think that Isaac Johnson, a true 7-footer for this Hawaii team that's able to give you over 7 rebounds per game. He's been the main scorer with about 12.5 points per contest. Is really going to be able to dictate things. You've got Yaitis Nemishka, Harry Ruyadev, and Quandre Bullock, all between 10 and 12 points per contest. All give you at least 4.9 rebounds per game. This team by committee has done a great job on the glass, so Bakersfield not going to get any sort of second and third chances there. With this Hawaii team, they're not necessarily an amazing 3-point shooting team. They're only shooting about 31.7% from 3. That's outside the top 250 in all of college basketball. And Hawaii, they themselves, outside the top 250 in terms of ball security, but with the way that they find a way to get to the free throw line, with just how rock solid this defense is, I do think that they find a way to be able to cover this number in a game that I think is going to involve a lot of dead possessions and a lot of missed shots. Semi-total 142.5, like the under, and I'm willing to lay up to 18 here with Hawaii. Now we get the extra games.
The normal betting board picks are complete, but there are some extra games today, so we go into the bonus.
306-569, 306-570. Vermont is going to be on the road against UMass Lowell, and Lowell does find themselves as a 4.5 to a 4.0 underdog. Toss game 144.5. Did semi-total here at a 143.5, so I'm going to be in on the under. You've got a UMass Lowell team that just has not really been able to get a lot going on offense. Matter of fact, neither on offense or on defense. They're outside the top 285 in terms of both points scored and points allowed on a per possession basis. UMass Lowell does not generate any turnovers whatsoever, 278th with that regard. Now, they should have some clean possessions. Vermont, 348th in the country in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis, and Vermont's main weakness has been the fact that they allow a very high clip of threes to be made. They allow opponents at a roadside shoot score venue to shoot over 38% from 3, but UMass Lowell is right now shooting its collective about 33.5% from 3-point, well outside the top 200 in all of college basketball, and they just don't take threes. They're a bottom 40 team in terms of percentage of their shots that come from 3-point range. You have Austin Green, who down low, so give you 14 points, 7.5 rebounds per game. Lone guy on the roster that gives you over 5 rebounds per game. Now, you've had Angel Montes along with Xavier Spencer be able to combine for about 23 points per game, and with Spencer, he shoots about 34% from 3, and Dario Yepto has been able to be a 40% 3-point shooter for this team as well, but the backcourt has been all sorts of suspect for this team. And on the flip side, you've got a Vermont team that you've got the TJs, TJ Long and TJ Hurley, who should be the best guards in this game. They combine for 27 points per contest, with Hurley shoots 36% from 3, Long more like 34% from 3 in a tight spot. It is a Vermont team that they do shoot about 73.8% free throw line. That's a top 125 mark in all of college basketball. And for Vermont, they just don't allow you to be able to get second and third chances. And typically when UMass Lowell has been a rock solid good team, they've been able to do a nice job on the boards. That's not going to be the case here. They're outside the top 250 with regards to rebound percentage. In Vermont, they're allowing opponents to grab only 20.4% of their missed shots as an offensive rebound. That's number 2 in all of college basketball, with Gus Yeldon being able to throw in their 17 points, shoots 38.5% from 3-point. I do think that Vermont is able to restore order after losing to Albany over the weekend and get it done here. Semi-line at 7.5, want to lay it with Vermont, and I'm going to be in on the under. Semi-total 143.5, 306-571, 306-572. Albany is on the road against Maine, and Maine hopes to not get Mained as 3.5 to 3.0 underdogs. 129.5 is the total. Set a total of a 130. I'm in on the over. I recognize the dangerous game that I'm playing because for Maine, they are 347th in the country in terms of total possessions per game, and you want to talk about a bad offense. They're a bottom 5 team in the country in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, and even if by some sort of sorcery they get to the free throw line, Maine is shooting 63.4% at the free throw line at home. That's a bottom 15 mark in all of college basketball. Albany, though, they shoot 64.2% at the free throw line. That is 358th in the country, but I do think that for Albany. They're going to be able to just generate some turnovers themselves, and I think that they themselves are going to be a little bit sloppy with the ball. It's an Albany team that's outside the top 2 in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis on offense. And Maine, one thing that they're doing a great job of, top 80 team in terms of generating turnovers, but Albany has been relatively solid on the inside. They're a top 150 team with their 2-point shooting percentage, and then you've got your top 2 scorers shooting well from 3. Amir Lindsay shoots 37% from the outside, 17.5 points per contest. Zach Matalu has been able to give you 10 points per contest. He shoots 39% for 3. And both of these guys shoot at least 74.7% the free throw line. Pretty much nobody else on the roster shoots above 75% free throw line. That's an issue, but you do have Kachu Okeke, who's been able to give you about 2 blocks, 9.5 points per game, and then Jaden Kempson has been able to give you a steal and a half, throws in there about 9.5 points per contest, and it's just really hard to have any faith in this Maine team. I think that the only D1 game that they won on their home floor was against the non-Division I, like my Maine of Kent or something like that. It was some non-D1 team, and you've got TJ Beal, who's been able to give you 12.5 points, 5 rebounds per game. He is a lone guy for Maine that gives you over 8.5 points per game. You've got Logan Carey. He does shoot 38% for 3, but Maine as a whole shoots less than 30.5% for 3 outside the top 3 with that regard. Not the world's worst team with regards to their interior offense. They're in the top 3 with regards to 2-point shooting percentage, but they're also a bottom 30 team with regards to offensive rebound percentage, and they are just absolutely getting blasted on the glass, and that's how I think that Albany is going to be able to get the job done. It's an Albany team that's 325th in the country in terms of their defensive rebound percentage. Maine, they are 326th. Both of these teams are allowing teams to grab about 33.2% of their misses as an offensive rebound, so I think that that's going to be more second and third chances than these teams are used to, and I think that you're close enough for late game fouling, and both of these teams are awful at the free throw line, but I just think that Albany has a better roster to be able to cover this number. Semi-line at 4, won't lay the 3 to 3.5 with Albany, and on the over semi-total 130, 3 of 6.573, 3 of 6.574. Binghamton is on the road against New Hampshire. New Hampshire is a 7.5 to an 8-point favorite total this game, 136.5 to 137.5. Maine, New Hampshire, the 7.5 point favorite, so one to lay up to 7 with them. Personally, if I were between a 7 to an 8, I'd rather lay 7 rather than take 8, but right now we are finding 8s, and I would not be surprised if this goes up any higher, and that would be my buy point on Binghamton. It's a Binghamton team that's rough. Really, really rough. They're outside the top 275 in terms of both points scored and points allowed on a per possession basis. One thing they don't do is allow you to get second and third chances. Top 75 team in terms of defensive rebound percentage. Now, Demetrius Lilly, their top rebounder, is now out for the season. They've had a year from HE double hockey sticks with regards to the injuries, and they're outside the top 330 with their 3-point shooting percentage. I think you see a little bit of positivity there, though. You've got Zaire Beverly along Jeremiah Quigley, who are healthy. They're combined for about 25.5 points per contest, and Quigley shoots 15% from 3. That should be going northward. He does give out about 6 assists per contest. Binghamton is not going to put you under duress. They're outside the top 340 in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis, and they really get pounded from the outside. They're outside the top 330 in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage. You know what New Hampshire doesn't do a good job of, though? Being able to shoot it from 3-point range. It's a New Hampshire team that they just don't shoot it well in general. They shoot 63.3% at the free throw line in their home games. That is a bottom 25 mark in the country. They're 308th with their 3-point shooting percentage. They're pretty rock solid on defense, as you've been able to have a pair of guys in Belial El-Shakiri along Jack Graham do a nice job headlining things, combining for about 21.5 points per contest with the 7.5 rebounds of El-Shakiri. They should be able to control things down low, and then Keyshawn Robinson, who spent a little bit of time dealing with injury, 11.5 points, right around about 2.5 assists per contest, but out of your top 4 scorers, none of them shoot above 33% from 3-point range. It is a New Hampshire team that's been pretty solid with regards to their shooting percentages, top 200 team with regards to opponents' 2-point and 3-point shooting percentage. This is a team that has also been a top 175 team in terms of defensive rebound percentage as well, so they do a relatively okay job there, but I do think that Binghamton going to see a little bit of positivity with regards to that outside shooting. I think that they hold in there against a New Hampshire team that I just don't trust them to be able to cover in a little bit of a tight spot at 8+. I'm going to be one to take the points with Binghamton. Did set a total of a 135.5, so I'm also in on the under. 36.575, 36.576. NJIT is on the road against UMBC. Maryland Baltimore County, an 8.5 point home favorite, 142 to 142.5 is the total. Semi-total 143.5. I do like the over. You got a UMBC team that uncharacteristically has been playing quite slowly this year, 267th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. NJIT, more of a mid-tempo team, 217th in the country in terms of total possessions per game, and NJIT, they're not a great 3-point shooting team, 291st in the country with that regard, but they're doing a little bit better job on the inside, while UMBC, they are a team that shoots it well from 3. They're 68th in the country, shooting 35.9% from 3-point range, but I could only set them as a 7.5 point favorite because this UMBC team is not going to put you under any sort of duress. In terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis, they are well outside the top 3 in all of college basketball. Now, in terms of their overall 2-point and 3-point 3-point shooting percentage defenses, they've been pretty rock solid. They're a top 225 team with that regard on both fronts, and they're not allowing second and third chances. Top 150 team in terms of defensive rebound percentage, but also below the top 320 in terms of offensive rebound percentage. So it's a make it and take it sort of team. You've got Delisle King along TJ Turner, up Armstrong, who combine for about 28.5 points per game, and Armstrong shoots 41% from 3. Ace Valentine shoots 40.5% from 3. Caden Diggs has been able to shoot about 10 points. He shoots 37% from 3-point range. So these guys have been solid. You've got Josh Odawundu, who's been able to give you about 5 rebounds per game as well. But for NJIT, Sebastian Robinson, he was dealing with an injury towards the beginning part of the season, wasn't himself. You take a look at what he's been able to do ever since conference play has began, and he's been averaging 19 points per game here in America East play. And then you've got David Bolden as a freshman who's stepped up overall for the season, 12 points per game. He shoots about 34% from 3-point range. It's an NJIT team that they are getting blasted on the glass. They're outside the top 300 with regards to rebound percentage, but now you've got a pair of guys in Melvin El Kaboli, who was missing for the first 12 games of the season, along with Ari Fulton, combining for about 12.5 rebounds per game. And Ikang Boli, he really improves this team down low, and I think that needs to be accounted for. And additionally, it's an NJIT team that's been outside the top 275 in terms of their ball security, but guess what's not going to happen in this game? Turnovers, and I do think that this is going to be close enough for late game fouling. I think that UMBC looks to crank up their tempo just a little bit more, so semi-line at 7.5 at 8+. We'll take the points with the NJIT, made my total 143.5, so I'm also in on the over. 306.577, 306.578. Bellarmine is on the road against Jacksonville. Jacksonville, a 3.5-point favorite total this game, 139.5, and I made Jacksonville the 1-point favorite. I'm going to be willing to take the points. You've got a Bellarmine team that has been a relatively solid offense. They're a country average team shooting about 33.9% from 3-point range, but where they really make their hay is down low. They also do a nice job in terms of taking care of the ball, so Bellarmine does find themselves about 130 in the country in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. Jacksonville does not. Jacksonville, 291st in the country in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. They just have not found that go-to scorer, which you actually have with Bellarmine. Bellarmine brings in a guy from William & Mary and Jack Karsinski, who stands 6'7", 19.5 points, 5.5 boards, shoots 37.5% from 3-point range. And while Bellarmine is a pedestrian team with their 3-point shooting percentage country average, they're a top 25 team in terms of their 2-point shooting percentage. Now, Bellarmine, bottom 5 team in the country in terms of their offensive rebound percentage. They get blasted on the glass. They're a bottom 30 team with that regard. Karsinski, one guy on the roster that gives you over 4.1 rebounds per game. It's not as if this Jacksonville team is one of their vintage rebounding teams. So as right now for Jacksonville, you've only got one guy on the roster for them that's averaging over 5 rebounds per game. As you've got Donovan Rivers, who gives you 7.5 points, 5.1 rebounds per game. Nobody else gives you more than 4.2 rebounds per game. And then you don't have a single double-figure scorer for this team. Its whole is greater than the sum of its parts, as you pretty much have, I would say, 8 different guys between 5.6 and 9.8 points per contest. Jalen Jones, he's your main scorer, I guess, 9.8 points per contest, shoots in the mid-30s from 3-point range, but Jacksonville always supposed to pride themselves on good, rock-solid defense, and that's not been the case, especially on the inside. This is a Jacksonville team that, in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage, they've been one of the worst defenses in all of college basketball. Right now, they're checking in right around about 303rd in all of college basketball. Country average team with regards to opponents' 3-point shooting percentage, but also not a team that's going to put you under too much duress, while they themselves have been turning the ball over quite a bit. Jacksonville is about 243rd in the country in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis. Meanwhile, they themselves are a team that's outside the top 225 in terms of ball security. I think that Bellarmine is going to be able to hold in there. I do think that this is going to be a slowed down game, as Bellarmine is outside the top 275 in terms of total possessions per game. In terms of Jacksonville's stake, they're 329th, but again, Bellarmine is not playing any sort of defense whatsoever, and I do think that for Bellarmine, they're going to be able to hit some shots from 3 and hold in their semi-line at a 1, so I'm going to be willing to take the points with the Bellarmine. Semi-total 145, so I'm also in on the over. 306.579, 306.580. Central Arkansas is going to be on the road against West Georgia. West Georgia is a slim home underdog here, 3.5 to 4.5 point home underdog. So on this game, 153.5. Semi-line at 1.5. I'm going to be one to take the points with West Georgia. It is a unit that has been able to do a very rock solid job with their 3-point shooting. And for West Georgia, they've really bumped up their tempo this year in terms of total possessions per game, 71st in all of college basketball. Central Arkansas has always been a pretty fast team. They're 123rd in the country in terms of total possessions per game. And Central Arkansas just has not been the same defense when they've been away from home rather than when they have been at home. For Central Arkansas, much better than they have been in past years, 190th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, but they do give up about 17.5 points more per 100 possessions away from home rather than at home. West Georgia's just getting pelted on defense. They're outside the top 325 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, and for Central Arkansas, this is not a team that's going to go into flamethrower mode from 3-point range. They only shoot its collective about 32% from 3. That's outside the top 250, but Cameron Hunter, versatile player, 17 points, 4 boards, boards, steal and a half per contest. He shoots about 33% from three, and each of your top 5 scores for the team, if you include Rashad Bolden, is right now dealing with an injury, or I'll give you at least a steal per contest. For Central Arkansas, Ty Robinson, 14.5 points per contest. He's been able to give you about 5.5 rebounds per game, but West Georgia has on their side the best rebounder in this game. That would be Sheldon Williams-Dryden. He's saying 6'6", great versatility, 20 points, 9 boards, steal per contest, shoots about 32% from three-point range. You've had Josh Smith be able to give you about 16 points. He helps out in the backcourt. It's a West Georgia team that has been solid in terms of taking care of the ball. Top 175 team in terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis. Now they are not good with their interior offense. They are outside the top 3 in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage, and that's where you're really able to exploit the Central Arkansas team. Central Arkansas is a unit that they do a pretty solid job in terms of guarding the 3-point line, not so much inside, and for this West Georgia team, they do find themselves outside the top 275 themselves in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage, but for West Georgia, I do think that they have a little bit of an edge on the glass that should allow them to be able to hold lively in this game. If you take a look at them in terms of their defensive and offensive rebound percentages, they do have a little bit of an edge here. West Georgia, they rebound about 37.1% of their missed shots as an offensive rebound in their home games. That is a top 50 mark in all of college basketball, and I do think that those second and third chances keep them lively in this game. Semi-total 153.5 at a 153 or less, single 153 out there in on the over, and I'm willing to take anything more than 2 points here with West Georgia. 306-581, 306-582. Eastern Kentucky is on the road against North Florida. North Florida is a underdog here of 6 to 6.5 points. 167 after 168.5 is the total, and I said a total of a 167. So I'm going to be in on the under. Now this is a North Florida team that is in the bottom 15 of the country in terms of defensive rebound percentage. They're allowing teams to grab darn near 40% of their misses as an offensive rebound. Eastern Kentucky, not a bad offensive rebound rate team, but I mean it's more at home. They're overall 115th in terms of percentage of their missed shots that result in an offensive rebound, but away from home they only grab about 27% of their misses as an offensive rebound, and Eastern Kentucky is typically a team that they look to generate a lot of turnovers and really pump it up from three-point range, and they do shoot about 34.5% from three-point range. That's a top 150 mark in all of college basketball, but they're not generating the turnovers that they have in the past. For this Eastern Kentucky team, they're 335th in terms of turnovers force on a per possession basis. North Florida is not going to put you under duress here in 54th in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis, but this North Florida team should be able to find some good looks from three-point range. They shoot overall 34.9% from three. That actually goes down to 32.3% at home, despite the fact that Cameron Oriole has been a nice scorer, 17.5 points per contest. He shoots about 40% from three-point range, and then North Florida has gotten great production out of Kent Jackson here recently. He's flying 13.5 points. He shoots about 35% from three-point range. Nobody on North Florida gives you over 5 rebounds per game, and North Florida is a team that's going to just really give it up on the inside. They're outside the top 360 in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage. Meanwhile, for Eastern Kentucky, around the outside, you've got Austin Ball along Turner Buttery, who have been able to combine for 22 points per contest. Both shoot about 36 to 36.5% from three-point range, and it's an Eastern Kentucky team that's going to look to bomb it from three. They're a top 15 team in terms of percentage of their shots that come from three-point range. Same goes for this North Florida team, and both teams are hovering right around about 250th in terms of opponents' three-point shooting percentage, so they're bad, but they're not absolutely ghastly bad. But with the way that Eastern Kentucky not generating as many turnovers anymore, and the way that this Eastern Kentucky team really just gives up a lot of shots on the inside, I do think that North Florida is going to be upholding this game, and in a pressure spot, it is a Eastern Kentucky team that they shoot about 72% of the free throw line. That's outside the top 175 in all of college basketball. North Florida, they don't get to the free throw line often, but they shoot 77.7% of the charity stripe, top 30 mark in the country. So somehow line at 5, I'm willing to take anything above 5 here with North Florida, and like the under, semi-total 167, 306-583, 306-584. Stetson is on the road against Lipscomb. Lipscomb is finding themselves as a 14.5 point favorite total on this game, 157 after a 158. This is a game that is going to be an afternoon delight. This is going to be 1 p.m. Eastern, and I just set Lipscomb as a 14.5 point favorite. If we can get down to a 14, I'm going to be willing to lay it. You've got a Lipscomb group that should be able to take apart a Stetson team that has always prided themselves on good three-point shooting, and they're just not providing any of that this year. 239th in terms of their three-point shooting percentage, but away from home, they shoot 26.3% from three, and this is a Lipscomb group that has been solid with their three-point shooting, 83rd in the country with regards to their three-point shooting percentage. Lipscomb has had a little bit of an issue in terms of taking care of the ball, but much of that has been coming away from them. At home, they've been a top 100 team in terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis, and Stetson is just never going to put you under duress. Stetson outside the top 300 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. They, away from home, have actually been a top 200 team in terms of generating turnovers, and for Lipscomb, they actually do crank up the tempo a little bit more. Top 100 team in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis. In terms of total possession, 69th in the country. Stetson, they're more around about 214th in the country, and Stetson starting to find a little bit more on offense. Ethan Copeland has been a big part of that with about 13 points from three-point range. Shoots about 38.5% for three. Jamie Phillips, he shoots 35% for the outside, 16 points per game. And for Stetson, just getting into conference play has been good for them, shooting 37% from three. They give themselves no second and third chances whatsoever outside the top 275 with regards to offensive rebound percentage. They don't allow a lot of second and third chances themselves, but other than Jamie Phillips, nobody else gives you over 4.7 rebounds per game, with Colin Cole actually giving you about 4.7 rebounds per game. But for Lipscomb, you still do have a few holdovers from last year's NCAA tournament team. Grant Asman, along with Charlie Williams, being the main two. Both of these guys stand 6'10". Williams only gives you 2.5 rebounds per game, but 10.5 points, shoots 36% for three. Grant Asman shoots 37.5% from the outside. And then Ethan Duncan has done a nice job helping out this backcourt with about 11 points per game. And then Mateo Esmeraldo, 7 assists to fewer than 2 turnovers per game. He gives you about 10 points per contest. As a matter of fact, for this Lipscomb team, you've got essentially 6 different guys between 9.8 and 14.4 points per contest. I do think that that's going to be enough to be able to get it done. And for the Lipscomb team, also a top 150 team with regards to 2-point shooting percentage. I'm willing to lay up to 14 here with Lipscomb. Did semi-total here at a 156.5. I do think the Lipscomb generates enough turnovers to be able to keep it under. So like the under, and willing to lay up to 14 with Lipscomb. Wrap things up with 306.585, 306.586. Austin Peay plays also Florida Gulf Coast. Gulf Coast is a 4.5 to a 5-point underdog. 155.5 is the total, and I'm going to be willing to lay with Austin Peay. Set them as a 5.5 point favorite. Austin Peay overall 77th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, and in their home games specifically, they've been really good in terms of generating turnovers overall for the season. 28th in the country in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis, and though Florida Gulf Coast is 52nd in the country in terms of total possessions per game, they play at a rate of about 4 possessions per game slower when they're away from home rather than at home. Florida Gulf Coast, good 3-point shooting team. They shoot 36.5% from 3-point away from home. That's a top 40 mark in all of college basketball. J.R. Konzinski has been the main scorer, 15.5 points, 6.5 boards, stealing half. He shoots 35.5% from three, and then Jordan Ellerby, Ramir Barno, they combine to shoot about 37.5% per three. Between the two of them, you've been able to get 26 plus points per contest, but this is not the same rebounding team that we've seen in the past, and this has been a group that has been really dealing with some strife with regards to being able to guard things on the inside as well. And then on the flip side of things, you've got an Austin Peay team that's just been able to do a really good job in terms of executing in general with regards to things on the inside, and I do think that that is going to be able to win out in this case. You've got an Austin Peay team that has had Rashad Marshall, who was really not doing a lot for the team to begin the season, comes on over from Arkansas State. He's been able to just find peak form for Marshall. He's giving you right now about 12.5 points, a block, a steal, 6.5 rebounds per game, and then Cullen Parker alongside Zachary Collins. These two guys, they combine for about 30 points per contest, and Parker shoots 42% from 3-point range. It is a Austin Peay team that has been doing a nice job as well in terms of their 3-point shooting defense, top 150 team in all of college basketball with that regard as well. And with regards to their rebound percentage, Austin Peay has been able to ascend into the top 225 with that regard, with Marshall being able to step up. Anton Brookshire, he's only giving you about 7 points per contest, but nice glue guy that's able to give you about 2.5 assists per game. Tate McCubbin at 6'8", good versatility, 12 points, 5 boards, nearly 2 steals per contest. He shoots about 34% from 3-point. In a pressure spot, it is an Austin Peay team that they only shoot about 71.5% at the free throw line. A little bit of an issue there, but for a team that generates as many turnovers as they do, they're a top 125 team in terms of keeping you off the free throw line. That's big. Austin Peay is a fast but not warp speed team, 129th in terms of total possessions per game. They do slow down a little bit more at home, so I think that that keeps the total under. So my total 151.5. So I do like that under, and with Austin Peay, want to lay up to 5 with them, and that'll wrap things up for the Thursday edition of Coast to Coast Hoops, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. Big thanks to Colby Marchio. He does such great work over at Your Betting News. He joined me in the last segment. If you do like hearing from this fine podcast, Coast to Coast Hoops, you're able to subscribe wherever your podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher, and TuneIn. If you have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, you have one or two ways to be able to throw those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at @G_81. Keep in mind, letters EM, the mean does not matter, so as per usual, please do send these into the timeline. And the other way is find an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it's very much appreciated. From there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review. And I'm with you guys every single day on this podcast, give you picks and analysis on every game, every day. So I'll be back with you guys once again tomorrow. Thank you so much.